Hey folks, it's Bear Gardener, and it is time for the fourth and final installment of Kards SOE, delving into the Homefront Winter expansion, and this is a bumper episode. Not only are we going to be covering another pile of card drops, including the last spoilers to have dropped for the entire expansion, we have now seen everything, we are also going to cover everything else that's gone on, including balance patches, card changes, reworks, the whole thing. One of the only reasons I'm able to do this is the eternal patience of my expatriate Irish comrade-in-arms, CoreData, who has once again juggled his schedule in a way that, frankly, was next to impossible, sadly, for the third of our triumvirate, who is in Canada, and managed to get here in time for me to be able to do a recording at a time that I can do, which is the biggest challenge at the moment. Still, home not home. What can I say? Core, as ever, thank you. Let the folks know who you are, and thanks for coming along.
Hey guys, it's going CoreData here, and yeah, just like Bear, I'm a small-time cards content creator focusing on primarily deck building and brewing. I do a lot of tier 2 deck testing, as well as occasionally some more meta stuff, as well as a lot of very fun and silly brews. You can find me over on YouTube at CoreData or on Twitch, streaming whenever I have a moment free. Also at IRE_CoreData on Twitch.
It's all down there. Go do it. All right, so we're not going to bury the lead. There's a lot going on at the minute, but I know there is one topic above all that people have been chomping at the bit since it was announced, since it appeared. Everybody's been on when, and when s'arrive. It is here. Resistance has returned. Substantively reworked, I would argue bordering on completely redesigned. So, I'm going to walk you through the cards, then Core and I are going to have a chat, kind of like we did about the Italian package for the Bersigliari, only covering the new rework to Resistance. Core has been given total freedom to ask whatever questions he wants, with the understanding that some of them I may not be able to answer, but this is very much no holds barred, because I know this is a polarizing topic. Right, let's do the hopefully less polarizing part of me just telling you how the cards work. Right, let's start with Resistance itself. The card, the legend, the thing that starts all of this. So, Resistance, first and foremost, is a token. This is a card that can only find its way into a deck via another card effect. Can't run copies of it. Not that you'd want to. We'll see why in a minute. But Resistance is a 0 credit order. All right, I'll get back to 0 credit in a minute. It's 0 credit as future-proofing more than anything else, because actually, as the card stands, that 0 credit is totally irrelevant, and I'll cover why in a second. But it is a 0 credit order, which, as I say, is added to your deck through other effects. And what Resistance says is play for free when drawn, full stop. Lose 1 credit, full stop. Take 1 HQ damage, full stop. Pin a friendly unit, full stop. Draw a card, full stop. There is a reason I sound like a Morse code machine, and that will become apparent when I walk you through the card. So firstly, the first sentence, play for free when drawn. This doesn't mean you get to play it for free. It plays itself. As soon as this pops out of your deck, it plays for free. You have no control over it. Your opponent has no control over it. It just happens. Core, I know, will be familiar with this from other games. It is not an uncommon mechanic in digital card games. This card plays itself. The next thing it does is that you lose 1 credit. Note, 1 credit, not 1 credit slot, not something weird. It just means that if you had 5 credits for the turn, you now only have 4. The next thing it does is deal 1 point of damage to your HQ. Coming back to that in a second. Then it will pin a friendly unit. Now, this does not say random because, again, with international text formatting, we couldn't fit the word random on in a reasonable sentence for a number of languages, some of them Scandinavian, some of them Eastern European, and some of them just Asian. But they all had too much text to make this work. So it is a random friendly unit. Nobody has any control over this. It just selects a random unit of yours when it plays itself. Finally, it says draw a card. Now, I first and foremost, before we go any further, want to draw attention to that last 3-word sentence, because it's very important. This version of Resistance does not put anything into your hand that you can't play, and it does not prevent you drawing. If you are unlucky enough to play Convoy and draw 2 copies of Resistance, or let's say you play Convoy and you're unlucky enough to draw 3 copies of Resistance, you will still end up drawing 2 cards after everything else is triggered. There is no draw denial. There is no hand fill. There's no hand lock here. It just pops, plays itself, fulfills its available function, and buggers off. That's how it's designed to do. Right, I said I wanted to go back to HQ damage. That's because I want to answer a question that I know is going to get answered now so that it's out of the way. I may probably do a video on this just in case anybody wants it in the future. One specific card in the game right now will leap to many people's minds as going, ha, screw you, Resistance. The mighty and ever-effective Seahawk. I love you all, but I'm about to make you very miserable. Seahawk says enemy cards. This card comes from your deck. It's your card with your card back. Seahawk does jack against this card. Other things may, but Seahawk does not reduce the damage. I just wanted to get that PSA out of the way because I think it's something, given how often Seahawk is seeing play at the minute, that really needs to be understood. Anyway, that's Resistance. Right, how on earth do we get Resistance into decks? Right, first way we can get Resistance into decks is via the Expeditionary Corps. Expeditionary Corps is a 2-cost, 1-op cost standard French infantry. It is a 2/3 guard, and it has deployment. Add a resistance card to the enemy deck. Right? Add a card to the deck. Really importantly, it adds it randomly. It adds it somewhere randomly in your deck, but very, very critically, we've made sure it doesn't say shuffle. If you can't figure out why, you're not paying attention to the meta at the minute. That would be bad. So this just adds it somewhere randomly in your deck. In the case of Expeditionary Corps, it adds 1 copy of that into your deck. Right, let's move on to another way to get resistance into your deck. This is Vive la Résistance, which is arguably the big flagship card of this entire archetype. It is a 2-cost standard French order, and it's really simple. It says, add 2 resistance cards to the enemy deck, full stop, draw a card. So this is pay 2, draw a card, and add 2 copies of resistance randomly into the enemy's deck. Obviously, this is the biggest propagator. Moving on, we also have Resistance Council. Resistance Council is a 1-cost standard French order, and it says, pin target unit. Deal 1 damage to the enemy HQ, add a resistance card to the enemy deck. So this gives you a baby resistance that you sort of have some control over, and shoves another one into the enemy's deck as a sort of bonus, but it doesn't do the credit denial. Right, next we have... Let's do these in credit order. So next we have Liberation. Liberation is a 3-cost special French order, and it says, add 3 resistance cards to the enemy deck. Your HQ gains +6 defense. We're not breaking these down yet. I'm sure Core's going to help me do that in a minute. Finally, in the adding category, we have Arming the Resistance. Arming the Resistance is a 4-cost special French order, and it says deal 5 damage to target unit. Full stop. Add a resistance card to the enemy deck for each excess damage. So, if you play this onto a unit with 1 health, not only will you destroy the unit, you will add 4 copies of resistance to your opponent's deck. Right, that's how we add them. There are 2 further tools in the resistance box. The first is the Premier BCP. Premier BCP is a 3-cost. If you want me to pronounce the battalion and all of that, I can do it, but no, I don't have time right now. Just get me in the comments and I'll explain the history. This is a 3-cost, 1-op cost, 3/5 limited guard. And it says, draw a card when the enemy draws a resistance order. Fairly self-explanatory. As long as this is on the board, if your opponent draws a resistance order on their turn, stuff happens to them and you get to draw a card. Then we have the 27th DIA, which is a special French infantry. It is a 4-cost, 1-op cost, 4/6 Alpine Guard. And it says, deal 2 damage to the enemy HQ when the enemy draws a resistance order. Right. That obviously accelerates the resistance damage, and just because I know it's something that Core has been curious about many times before with the Alpine keyword, in this specific case, this technically I believe this is the 20e Division Infantry Alpine. They are the 27th French Mountain Division, hence Alpine. It's not the sign of a new Alpine archetype coming to France, but historically, they were an Alpine unit. They also had paratroopers. Don't ask. Anyway, that is the full pool of reworked resistance cards and newly added resistance cards. Obviously, I know a fair chunk about this. I've been involved in testing this, and also I've been talking a lot since we opened this video. So I'm going to let Core go, give some opinions, but also ask me any questions he might have about interactions or opinions on why certain choices were made. And for once, I have given him the freedom to ask the why. I just am limited in how much I can answer it.
Yeah, so first and foremost, this is a design space I am once again very familiar with. If anyone has played Hearthstone in the last year and a half, or before the last rotation, they'd be very familiar with Plague Death Knight. It was basically exactly what Resistance is. You shuffle in Plagues, they cast when drawn, and they have pretty much the exact same effects of taxing your opponent's hand, dealing damage, and interacting with the board. In Hearthstone's case, you had the Plague of the Undead Plague, the green one, and that basically spawned 2/2s when your opponent drew it. So yeah, this is literally just Plagues from Hearthstone, essentially. Plague Death Knight was fine. The reason it saw play in the metagame it saw play in was because it had this innate ability to hose Highlander decks. In Hearthstone, there's a Highlander archetype built around Singleton, so you have things like Reno Jackson and whatnot that care about having only 1 copy of each card in your deck. And having an archetype that shuffled in multiple copies of multiple cards into the opponent's deck was a great way of switching off those synergies. So that was the prime reason that saw play. Plagues as a whole were only fine. But Cards is a little bit different. Cards is the way you spend credits in Cards is a lot more important than how you spend your mana in Hearthstone. So losing a credit in Cards is a much bigger deal than it is having your hand taxed in Hearthstone, because not only does this cut you off from playing things on curve, this also cuts you off from operating your units potentially, which means if you then have to take potentially make a choice between operating a unit and taking a trade to not die on board, or playing a removal spell in hand. So I do think Resistance is likely going to be better in Cards than Plagues were in Hearthstone. I just don't know how good. Because France has undergone a bunch of reworks and has had a bunch of rotations hitting the forced draw side of the nation. Phony War is gone, Honor and Loyalty was reworked, and Compromise is leaving as well. So there's no way of forcing your opponent into a situation of basically filling their deck with resistances and forcing them to draw them. So it's not nearly as controllable in again, looking back at other decks in Hearthstone that had like similar playstyle things like Garrote Rogue, for example,
Oh,
that
I
shuffle a
love
thing into
that
your deck.
deck so much.
Yeah, that shuffles a burn spell into your opponent's deck and forces them to draw it. There's no room for that in Cards because of all the tools that have been rotated and changed, which is a good thing. Having an OTK deck like that takes away the agency from you in that sense, that just makes you a passenger in just drawing the things, is like a very unfun interaction, a very unfun thing to have in the game. Resistance as a whole, I think, is going to be solid. It's just, I don't know, given the speed of the metagame, is resistance going to be good enough? Maybe. The main thing that like leads me to think this is going to be like pretty solid is the credit taxing and the pin on this. I don't think the HQ ping matters at all for the most part. It's a very gradual and slow win condition that can potentially drag your opponent down into range of dying to something from hand. But the main thing is the taxing, forcing your opponent into very awkward game states, and also interacting with their board by pinning random things at very inopportune moments can be very, very swingy. So I'm interested to test with this. I'm not internal testing, so I haven't play tested with this at all with the new reworked resistance. It's a very interesting design space. Like I said, Hearthstone has played around with this quite a lot with shuffling stuff into your opponent's deck. We had it before with like Bad Luck Albatross, shuffling 2 blank 1/1s into your opponent's deck just to give them dead draws and also shut off the Highlander synergies. Then we obviously had the curses, which do the same thing. So yeah, it's interesting design space. I am just very unsure as to how good this is going to be in practice. In theory, it's going to be pretty strong, but it's also very meta reliant in a lot of regards. As for the actual cards that interact with resistance, I think there's a handful that are better than the rest. I do think Expeditionary Corps is probably not going to be like seen all that often. A 2-cost 2/3 guard is like fine, but I think you much rather play Vive la Resistance just as like a much better way of shuffling the resistances. Plus, it draws you a card, which is nice. It's not nearly as defensive as Expeditionary Corps, but I don't think you need it to be defensive because you have things like Resistance Council, which are giving you like means of interacting with the board. You also have like Arming the Resistance, which is removal, and you have Liberation, which is healing, as well as a very, very potent resistance shuffler. And then you have the 27th DIA and the BCP. I think BCP is for sure going to be in the deck. I think just on occasion drawing an extra card from your opponent, just drawing their card for turn, is going to be pretty good. Sometimes this is going to hit multiple times. So I think BCP is going to see play. It's also just a very, very good unit on rate. A 3-cost 3/5 guard is solid. So I think BCP is likely going to see some amount of play in the resistance deck. DIA is also likely going to see an amount of play in the resistance deck, just as a means of like increasing the clock in a lot of senses. And again, it's also just a very well statted guard unit, a 4-cost 4/6, which you want because you're going to be taking some turns off to shuffle the resistances in. So I think as a whole, the 2 payoff cards, the DIA and the BCP, are going to be good. As for the shufflers, I don't think Expeditionary Corps is going to see like as much play. I do think we're going to see a lot more Viva la Resistance and most likely Liberation and Arming the Resistance. I'm not 100% sold we're going to see Resistance Council either. It's a case of deck space as well, because this is a self-contained package in an ally nation.
Yeah, so one thing I'll hop in and point out for anyone who's wondering, there are effectively 21 cards that you can run, but you have 12 slots. So this is a much less much less efficiently packaged than, say, the Italian package. In fact, one might argue this is very deliberately quite inefficiently packaged. because you're going to have to make some choices. I figured it's relevant at this point to let people know that it is necessary to be aware you can't just shove everything with resistance written on it into your deck. There isn't space.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm interested to see how you personally, like, I suppose the question I'm getting to here is, like, the question's going to be, isn't it? What's the build? What's the 12 cards you run?
Yeah, just from looking at it, I'm imagining it's going to be something along the lines of 2 BCP, 2 DIA, 4 copies of Viva la Resistance, and then the 2 Arming and 2 Liberations. I'm imagining that's going to be most likely the default package. And then depending on what the metagame evolves into, maybe you slot in Resistance Council for like against like hyper aggro, because it pins their turn 1 play and also like pings the HQ. But most likely it's going to be 2 copies of BCP, 2 copies of DIA, the full 4 resistance, and then the 2 specials, Arming and Liberation. I think that's likely going to be the set. But like, again, because you're playing all these resistance cards, and you do kind of need critical mass of resistance cards realistically to get over the line if you're playing like just hard resistance control. It means you're not going to be playing any of the other French cards. You're not playing Call to the Colonies or anything like that, which means you're like missing out on healing. So like the question is it going to be worth going all in on resistance a lot of the time? Like maybe it's good enough to go all in on. I'm not 100% sold. I'll be totally honest.
I
When you
suppose
compare this to like when you compare this to like the shuffle package, for example, like the shuffle package was a much more neatly parceled synergy package of like just a handful of cards that was just good enough on its own in aggro to see play. But like resistance as a package isn't good enough by itself to be like to just slot into control. You have to kind of build around it, which is where I begin to become a little bit more dubious of it.
Yeah, I suppose, like, the one thing I will say is that it's that thing, isn't it? Like, the new resistance order thematically is a really interesting degree of just pure disruption, which is something that I've not seen in many modern card games. Have gone away from this, but back in the dinosaur days of Magic the Gathering, a couple of decks flirted with what are effectively disruption mechanics that are a little bit harder to control the timing of, but that break down the tempo and the timing of your opponent. And resistance just 4 copies of Vive la Resistance in a mid-range deck that includes a bunch of other tools that have nothing to do with the resistance at all has the potential to give your opponent really awkward turns. And I think I'm so not sure if it's worth the effort to be like, because resistance is a win condition for me. I personally am very, very unsure about the DIA, because you're giving up 2 slots for a card that, yes, it's a good card. Let's not lose sight of the fact that it is good stats, but you have a whole main nation to get good stats from, and you're only running 2 of these. And if it doesn't, the thing is, if you could put this on the board, and like you were saying earlier, if you could put this on the board and then just roll out Compromise to guarantee the procs, that 2 damage to HQ feels really good. But you could spend 4 credits, put this on the board, and even if you think you've got your opponent in a position where they can't trade it or remove it, you could run 4 straight turns without them drawing a single resistance card, by which time they found an answer. And that's, like, in some ways, I am deeply, by the way, I know there are people out there who very much enjoyed resistance, and I get where you're coming from. I understand that it is an archetype with a history, but it's a kind of archetype that I find very unhealthy for the long-term survival of the game, because it creates really negative player experiences for one half of the game. And we have a tendency when playing digital games to forget that there's a human being on the other side of the match. And if they have enough crappy experiences, they're going to stop playing the game. And that means you don't have people to play the game with. Then the game gets smaller. There's less money in the game. The developers are less able to engage with the game, which means the game becomes less, well, moderated, which means the game becomes worse. The spiral happens. Now, that might just be a me thing. I might just be tremendously old-fashioned, and maybe it is actually the modern world, and who gives a shit about other human beings? We'll just all be complete arseholes. But I like to think that, in general, the cards community is a lot better than that. Certainly the parts that I interact with are. And I think this is a much healthier pseudo-control archetype, purely and entirely... I can't believe I'm uttering this sentence being me. Purely and entirely because of the RNG.
Yeah.
Clip It Bear references RNG in a positive way. In this instance, the randomness is actually really good because you can't force it, you can't control it, which means you have to take a risk, which also I think is very thematic historically. But yeah, that's where I become really skeptical of, is the DIA actually worth the include if it never procs? I mean, yes, it's a 4/6 guard, but I don't know. Anyway, I guess this is where I think you're gathering, as Core and I talk about this, that the hardest thing for this is going to be finding the build that works and the main nation that you want it to work with. Obviously, there are ones that spring to mind. Like, Japan will always spring to mind because Burn exists, and Japan has some pin synergy.
Yeah.
Britain springs to mind given the recent reveals because we've started to see more Garrison support. And Garrison, of course, if you can pin your opponent, is pinging your opponent for damage that you can't answer. Those are the two big ones. I know Germany may spring to mind, but I'm going to say this super bluntly. German control/burn could not care less about France's, and it doesn't need the extra burn, and it certainly doesn't need the extra burn at random. If you're building that deck, you're really just doing it for funsies, in my opinion, because it's not actually adding anything good. Now, Core may disagree with me, and we'll find out in a second, but my read at the minute is that this is going to so depend on the main nation and the build as to how you want to use a ridiculously over bulky tool set.
I will say a number of the rotations now make a lot more sense to me, having seen the reworked resistance, particularly the Soviet rotations with the 2/4 can only cast play one order per turn guy, plus the things that ping you for drawing cards, because when you draw the resistance and you play it when drawn, it shuts off your orders for the rest of the turn by itself. And also because the resistances draw extra cards, you also would have been burnt out by things like the KV. So very funny to me that those had to be rotated in order for resistances to come back. Look forward to Classic, by the way. Look forward to having your entire order, like your handful of orders switched off by randomly drawing a resistance with the 2/4 in play. That's going to be great.
One thing I can say is that reworking resistance was not easy.
Yeah.
I'll be really clear. Reworking resistance was hard work because you have to find something that does justice to an iconic part of French warfare, does justice to a name that has so much weight behind it with the history of the original resistance in cards, but at the same time doesn't just go back to miserable hand flooding, which I don't think... I don't know. I can't say nobody wanted to see, but I think it's safe. I think I'm fairly safe in saying the majority of people did not want to see long games going to fatigue with flooded hands being the norm.
Yeah. No, I do much prefer this reworked version of Resistance. Like I said, it's something I've experienced with like Plague Demon or Plague Death Knight rather in Hearthstone. It's just a case of whether or not it's actually going to be good. Like I said, with the Plague Death Knight thing, it was good because of how it interacted with some of the most popular decks in the metagame, switching off the Highlander stuff. I I just don't know if this is going to be good enough. Like as a package, again, resistance itself very very powerful. You're reliant on shuffling critical mass into the deck to force your opponent into drawing them like every other turn or so, or maybe drawing 2 in a turn.
I feel
I just don't know
obligated
how
to because
consistency.
I feel obligated because I know Core's doing it out of habit from Hearthstone. Try to edit out the word shuffle whenever he says it. For
Oh
those of
yes,
you,
yeah. Sorry.
because weirdly we are in a place in Cards where that would be a very specific thing.
Yeah, no, it's shuffling, but not shuffling.
Not shuffling, yeah.
Yeah.
It's randomizing. But
It
yeah.
just manifests them at random points in your deck rather than shuffling them in. But yeah, I just don't know. It's something that I'm going to have to play with and experiment to fully grasp on whether or not it's actually going to be good. So do expect a video on this at some point. It's very difficult to know from just looking at them if it's going to be good enough.
Yeah, I will send you some testing lists when everything drops that you can use as a jumping off point. Because obviously, I'm not going to hide the fact I've had a head start. I'm also not going to have you met me. Unsurprisingly, I ran some reps on this deck when I had the chance because I was very, very dubious and I'm very specific about certain things coming into game, and I'm interested to see what happens when it goes live. But okay, we've done close to 30 minutes on Resistance, and I think it's safe to say we've covered it. I'll give Core one last chance if there are any specific interactions or questions he wants to ask about that I might have missed.
No, I don't think I have any like mechanical questions about it. It's fairly straightforward, just to cast and draw and stuff and all that. I don't think there's any interactions off the top of my head that I can think of that might come up. I think everything's pretty. Actually, I do have one minor question with things like Shibata. Does this trigger Shibata when you draw it?
So you mean if your opponent has Shibata on board and you
Yeah,
draw this?
yeah.
Yeah, it would do. You're playing an order.
Okay, yeah. Okay, no, that's pretty much the only mechanical question I really had.
In the same way that if unless something very weird happens with the way the game interprets interaction, in the same way
also,
that Seahawk wouldn't work, Shibata would have to work.
Just to get ahead of it, anyone that's thinking, oh, I can play Blackwatch and force my opponent to burn 2 credits, no, because the first line of text is play for free, so it doesn't care about Blackwatch.
Yeah,
also,
I should say, I did say I would come back to that earlier. The 0 credit is there as a sort of bit of future-proofing, because there are edge cases, in particularly, for example, Air, Land and Sea. If you play an Air, Land and Sea and you're unlucky enough to pull 3 copies of Resistance from your deck, then there are ways that you could hypothetically end up with a copy of Resistance in your hand. So it has to have a cost just in case. But it itself could not care less. Play for free trumps everything else when you draw it.
Yeah. Also, on the people looking at Seahawk 2 switches off, no, you need to be looking at M6. M6 will turn this off.
Yes, it will.
Yep.
And anything it's just understanding and parsing the text, which can be a lot. Right, let's go past some maybe simpler text as we hop into the actual card reveals from the last couple of days. We're going to go in the order that I've got them in my folder. Live with the pain. I have not had time today to go and reorder things, so these should be close to the order that they landed in Discord, but I guarantee nothing. This is Germany, and this is a German elite. This is Front and Homeland. This is a 4-cost German elite order, and it has really interesting text because it says, a draw from your deck on turn 4, full stop. Reduce the cost of German cards with odd cost in your deck by 1. Core, I'm so interested to hear what you think about this, because I've lost track of the differing opinions that have been flying about this card, and I've been mostly tuned out.
I am on the side of this card is pretty bad for the most part. I do have one mechanics question in regards to this. The draw from your deck on turn 4.
Yay!
Does the draw from your deck on turn 4, does this mean that this will be your draw for turn, or is this a second separate draw that will happen on turn 4?
My understanding is this will draw itself, but you will still draw normally.
Okay, so that makes the card a little bit better.
No
So,
guarantees, by the way, but my understanding, at least the last time I looked at this on the test server, I believe that's how it worked, but this, not a major part of my testing palette. If anyone from IT was testing this more recently to make sure on release, let me know if I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure that the last time I saw this, it draws itself on turn 4, but that doesn't actually replace your draw for the turn.
Okay, so take everything I'm going to say next, bearing in mind that I'm assuming this is a second like effect draw after your draw for turn. Okay, so there's 3 decks that this potentially could go into. So this is obviously designed for the German even cost deck. I think this is terrible in the German even cost deck because this is predicated on the fact that you have built the German even cost deck incorrectly. Like the fact that like it's nice that this draws itself on turn 4, but you're giving up your turn 4 to reduce the cost of like maybe 2 5-drops in your deck and like a 7-drop, which is like not worth it at all. Because ideally in the even cost deck, like 90% of your deck is going to be even cost. You're only going to have like 1 or 2 odd cost cards that you cannot live without. That's like it. So this does not make sense in the even cost deck. Again, like I said, it assumes you've just built the deck completely wrong and this is there to fix it for you. The second place that this could potentially see play in, that I also think is incorrect, is Germany ramp, like GER-US ramp. I've seen people like ping pong around the idea of, oh, this is like deck thinning and also like pseudo ramp because it reduces the cost of like a bunch of your cards by 1. But it doesn't really work like that. Also, assuming that you've played War Machine on 2, you are not going to draw this on the following turn because this draws on turn 4, not when you have 4 credits, on turn 4. Which means if you've ramped on 2, you're not drawing this until you've got 5 credits. It'll always be turn 4. It doesn't care about how many credits you have, it cares about the turn count. So that immediately like throws the curve off of playing this in ramp. And also looking at like the Germany ramp decks at like currently, you don't have that many odd cost cards for the most part. You have like the Henschels and the Panzergrenadiers, and then maybe like a Schwalbe, like your Alpenfestung, but Alpenfestung's leaving the format. All your late game things are like even cost, except Capitulation after the nerf is now 9, but I don't think this really matters with Capitulation.
Yeah, I mean, let's be fair. Like, math says that simple math says that you have to hit at least 5 odd cost cards with this to care that you played it.
Yeah, and like, this is in no way comparable to actual factual ramp, because ramp will always give you the +1 on everything you play for the rest of the game. This is giving you the 1 discount on a handful of things that don't really matter later in the game. Also, it's only in deck, which means if you've drawn any of them, it doesn't affect them. Also, if you draw this from your mulligan or in your first 3 turns, it's just a brick 90% of the time. So this in ramp I think is like thoroughly incorrect. And if you're playing this and you're just like, oh, but it's deck thinning, it's like, not really, because you're playing a bad card so that you can draw it and never play it. In like, for the most part, it's like the people that were playing patches and like Control Priest in Hearthstone. It's like, no, that's not how deck thinning works. If that's how deck thinning works, Squadron Hawk would have been the most played card in Magic the Gathering, but it's not. It's all played in one deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all played in one deck, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Legion Conquistador also saw 0 play in its entire time in the game.
If you want deck thinning in Cards, it exists. Go look at the Choco Boys.
Yeah,
That's actual deck thinning.
But the reason Choco Boys is good is not because it's deck thinning, it's because they are relevant one-drop bodies that
Yeah.
help smooth out your curve in the decks that want them.
That's
The
been
deck thinning is secondary.
Yeah, that's been the same. I mean, to reference Gwent fans drink. The Frost, Devo Frost in Gwent also ran cards that were deck thinning, but the only reason you wanted them was that the deck thinning's great. However, the cards themselves are also good. You don't include a card that says draw me just because the card says draw me, because it could say draw me, I hate you. And that could be it, and that hasn't thinned your deck. That's just gone. You included a card that could have been like, when you're evaluating this, if you're building decks, please look at it analytically and think, is there a card, any card in the cost that I would actually have wanted to play that I have not already got in my deck? If the answer is yes, including this card is bad.
Yeah, and therein is like the point I was getting to, is that the percentage points of win rate that you're making up by having this be a deck thinning piece compared to the percentage points that you're losing to drawing this naturally before it, or like having matchups where this does nothing. It's never going to be a plus on your win rate. It's only ever going to negatively impact your win rate. Sure, you'll have like the 1 in 10 games where it matters, and like the -1 card meant you top decked exactly what you needed on that given turn. But those cases are so fringe and so few and far between that it's not going to matter in 90% of games. So no, I think playing this like through the lens of, oh, it's deck thinning is, I think, a very naive way to look at the card. I do, however, think it does potentially have a one home. And I think that home may, like, this card is at its best when it's discounting a bunch of specifically 1 credit German cards. And there is one deck with a very high density of 1 credit German cards, and it's called Heinz. This, because there is no restriction on the credit reduction of this will turn every single 1 credit card in your deck to 0 credits.
Yes.
In a deck like Heinz, that will be relevant because you run so many 1 credit tanks, and you run a handful of 3 credit tanks that go to 2. This may just be good enough as a mid-game swing tool in Heinz, because you can play this on 4. Turn 5, you can play Prolonged Siege from Finland, draw 4 cards. Most likely those 4 cards are going to cost 0 credits. You can just flood the board. So I think this may potentially go in Heinz as like a weird pseudo like OTK enabler, where you like play this when you have like a free turn or whatever, and then you can just set up an OTK with like the KFC packs, and like your fast Heinz now costs 0 and your Greif costs 0. So you can like do some funky stuff with this, and then Kettenkrad, and then replaying your buffs. So I think if this is going to see play anywhere, it's going to be Heinz. But I don't think this is going to be good enough to remain in Heinz after like the initial test wave.
I was going to ask,
this card,
because I had the same thought, but I am not a particularly experienced Heinz player, but I happen to know that Core is. And one of the questions I had for this is, like, I get the logic, I do, that it has value in Heinz, because especially in Thin Heinz, actually, there are some really good targets for this to hit. But is it really, like, the maths in my head still, it doesn't feel like it's like, is it as good even as, say, Lotta? And
I mean, you still run Lotta, because you have to run Lotta. You have to run Lotta, and you have to run Greif. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm going to experiment this. I'm going to test this, but I don't see this surviving. I think this is likely going to be one of the initial cuts after like the first wave of testing. I don't think this is going to stick around in Heinz, and that's like its only real home, I think. I don't think this card is gonna. Yeah.
I'm really excited to see you, and I hope we can exchange some numbers when you test it, because it is logically I'm with you, by the way. Logically, it is the only place that I see it being actually good. That's not to say
Yeah.
people can't cook with it. That's not to say people won't have some fun with it. But I do think it's quite limited, especially for. And it's not often I say this about Germany, but especially for an elite.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more than happy that Germany got a bunch of like mediocre and not great
Yeah, oh,
elites
yeah.
this set. I don't think they needed the help.
Right. Well,
But yeah.
speaking of nations, sorry.
It does have it. I will say this: it does have the chance of breaking something in the future if they ever print anything that cares about zero cost cards in general.
That's
We
true.
had it happen in Legends. We had a very like one incredibly annoying like terrible meta game that revolved around a card that cared about zero cost cards because they had printed just enough mana cheating to make it relevant. So that is something to bear in mind. If there is at any point a card printed that cares about zero costs, we're going to see a lot of this card. But until that day, we're going to see it tested in Heinz, and then it's going to fall off the face of the earth, I think.
Well, I mean, you can timestamp it there and come back and tell us when we're wrong, but neither of us are sold. Okay, so speaking of nations getting elites, it's time to go to the US of A, and we're going to arrive at a new US elite. And this is Thunderbolt. Okay, so first and foremost, as much as I enjoy the entertaining use of the Subique Thunderbolt, this is the 83rd Infantry Division, and Thunderbolt actually wasn't used that much. Nerd dies, but it sounds cool, I suppose. This is a 3-cost, 1-op cost elite infantry. It is a 3/5 smokescreen shock unit. And it says deployment. Draw 2 cards, then choose a card in hand and put it on top of your deck. So I'm sort of hoping Core can convince me that I'm wrong. But this just reads terrible.
I think this card is actually pretty good. We've seen like it's before anyone. It's Night Patrol on a stick. It's a Night Patrol attached to a 3/5 infantry. Night Patrol has obviously seen quite a lot of play recently in the Brewster stuff, like in the like U.S. main and whatever ally Brewster things, because it's able to cycle the Coronados and whatnot, putting me on top and cycle the Alabamas. We've seen Catalina, like Catalina has been like a fringe inclusion, and it's been fine in those Brewster decks. It's just been like a little bit too slow. Even though it's a repeatable Night Patrol, it's just a little bit too slow to be like consistently good. I think this is just an upgrade on Catalina in the Brewster deck. This I think is a very, very, very good unit for specifically Brewsters or decks that care about stacking the top of the deck, like Navy midrange, for example. So I do think this is very, very good. The thing about it is you have to look at it through the lens of Night Patrol is a 2-cost card. So realistically, Thunderbolt is a 1-cost 3/5 with shock. Like the smokescreen is mostly irrelevant. It's the fact that it's a 3/5 with shock is very, very good. I think there is maybe a case for this in frontline because this is very, very like it's very good at taking trades. It's like 3-cost 3/5 is big. That's a lot. With
That
shock
is a lot
as
of
well
stats,
on top of that. Yeah, with shock on top of that, I think this is very, very good.
Okay.
Its homes are limited, like to pretty much like Brewsters and maybe Navy. I'm interested to see if the frontline people like J King and yourself, like if you find if a home for this in frontline, because I think it might fit. It's just a very interesting card. I think it's solid. I'm It's not amazing. I think it's solid enough that it's going to see play. Again, a 3-cost 3/5 with shock is just good. So I'm excited to test with it.
I don't know. It's
like I said, like
I'm more
compared to
convinced.
Catalina.
I'm more convinced than I was, which is taking some effort, if I'm honest, because my initial read on this card was very questionable, mainly because it's like the with the change to Alabama, like the big thing that this like Uber enables is so much less big. And that, by the way, is the only the Brewster's is like convince me I'm wrong, but Brewster's is the only reason this thing has smokescreen. It makes no other sense. I do think the thing that's going to work against it in frontline, especially in the current meta, in my opinion, and the timestamp when I'm wrong, is it's too slow. It doesn't have blitz. And shock's great, but frontline doesn't want to take the time to have to operate this 3 times to get the shock trade. And frontline doesn't want to be operating this from the support line to try and recover the front line, because that means it's gone wrong already, at which point actually you want it to be drawing you more cards, which means you can't activate the shock for fear of removing the smoke screen, getting it traded out and losing the draw. I don't know. We will see. I will say I sort of hoped that we were going to see a better US Elite, a more kind of ubiquitous, kind of universally useful US Elite. Because this is, if nothing else, even if I'm wrong on my overall read, even Core can't convince me this isn't tremendously niche.
Yeah, it's like fine. Like I said, it goes in like specifically boosters and maybe 1 or 2 other decks, like potentially. But yeah, like the cards that US received this expansion do not justify the rotation that they got hit with. Like US to this day still only has a single elite that you would consider playing in like any deck, which is exactly strat bombing, which is you get it for free.
Yeah.
So like. And maybe an argument can be made for Tiger Cat now as well, as maybe like being a decent auto include for like US mid range and stuff. But yeah, US is really out here hurting for like good elites.
Yeah, a little bit. It's really a struggle. But we will continue on the elite journey, because that's where we are now. And we're off to the Far East. We're off to Japan. And we arrive at a Way of Subjects. This is a 2-cost elite Japanese order. And it says, all Japanese cards in your deck get Bond, and your HQ gets +1 defense when you play this card. Yes, it is just your deck. It's very important to be aware of that. So the timing of playing this is going to matter. Also, I just want to say, it's giving all of your cards Bond, which means as soon as you play this, the minute that your opponent kills your last non-bonded Japanese unit, you done. Because you have 0 way. Because even if you draw a Japanese card that somehow would be able to remove the effect, it itself would have Bond. So you'd take Bond damage for playing it to try and turn something else off, which you'd have to have played first. So your best possible solution is you play a unit with Bond that goes on there, then you magically use a card that takes Bond off the unit, but then you've triggered Bond at least once, maybe twice. God, this is just a dangerous card. Anyway, before I get to my opinions, of which you may have gathered, I have some TM. Core, how do you feel about this card?
I think this card is like bad, but I'm very excited to play with it. I already like want to play this in Japan, France, because France has a very forgotten special that interacts very interestingly with this, which is Commando's Kiefer. It's a 2-cost 1-up 0/1 with Mobilize and Smokescreen that deals a damage to a random enemy whenever you gain HQ defense. So this basically turns all your Japanese units into like little bits of ammunition for this little Commando's Kiefer minigun. So I'm excited to play this really goofy Japan France Kiefer deck. It's going to be garbage. It's going to be absolutely unplayably bad, but I'm going to have a ton of fun doing it. This card as a whole is like, it's bad, but like maybe if Burn is like the deck in the format, you play this because it just beats Burn. But yeah, it's pretty garbage.
Yeah, I unsurprisingly to anybody who knows my history and general card gaming milieu, this is the kind of card that I don't object to it existing. I think it's fun that it exists in the game. Have fun playing it. You won't catch me playing this because, God, I hate the complete anti-synergy, the deck breaking bad turns, the moments you draw it and you're like, God, I never wanted to see you. It's just not worth it for me. But I do like the cook with Commandos Kiefer. I think it's going to be terrible and you're going to end up killing yourself more often than you win, but I will say that I do like the cook with Commandos Kiefer. But yeah, all right. So less sold on Japan's elite. What about Britain's elite? We have a British elite. We have National Service. This is a British 5-cost elite order. And it says, for each British card in your deck, give it +2 defense if a unit. Otherwise, reduce the cost by 1. Right, I want to address the awkward wording because I happen to know the reason for the awkward wording is translation. If we had used the clearer English, that a number of the other translations become ridiculously long because they're trying to explain a turn of phrase that doesn't work in, bluntly, languages that have rules and syntax in a way that English doesn't, because English is a terrible language. It just is. Trust me, I'm a writer. English is not a language. It's a bad pidgin. But what this means is, when you play this card, it will go through your deck. Every unit, every British unit in your deck will get +2 defense. Every British card in your deck that isn't a unit, your orders and countermeasures, will all have their cost reduced by 1 to a minimum of 0, as far as I am aware. Definitely not going to hit -1, but I do think you can hit 0 with this. And that change is in effect permanent. They're in your deck. When you draw them, they will have the changed stats. That's what the card does. Now we get to find out whether Core thinks what the card does is actually good.
This is a really tough one to evaluate. Like, when you consider how low I was on Front and Homeland from Germany, like, this is basically like roughly the same thing. Like, it's giving you a like minor cost reduction in deck on very specific things. But I think this is going to be on average better than Front and Homeland, because like it's giving the Brit units in your deck +2, which like it does affect a lot more the +2 health, considering the amount of like guards and stuff that Brit has. Like a +2 health on our Cromwell is pretty good. +2 health on Gordon Highlanders turns it into a 312 guard. So yeah, my one concern is that like on turn 5, is the reduction of is the cost reduction on the orders going to matter? I don't know. Like, I don't think so. When you look at the Brit orders already, most of the playable orders that you're looking to play are going to be like maybe 6 cost and below. You're kind of capping out at wave after wave. Carpet bombing's a little bit too slow nowadays to see much play. So I don't think the order reduction is going to really matter in the long run. And yeah, I don't think this is going to be good enough. I think if it was cheaper, maybe, but at 5 it's just a little bit too expensive, I think, to be worth considering. So I'm leaning towards bad, but I could be wrong. Like I said, mana cheating at this kind of at this magnitude is usually pretty strong. So we'll see. Like we had it in Hearthstone again. We had it like in Cantor's Flow, which at one point cost 2 mana that reduced all spells in your deck by 1 for Mage. Eventually went to 4 mana and still saw play because it enabled OTKs. So like maybe this enabled something, but I don't know. Like I can't think of anything off the top of my head I would want to do with it, particularly with Commandos now gone. So yeah, I'm not sold.
So I have 2 things to say on this. Most of them, though, really, I'm going to save myself from saying them because they kind of agree with what Core's just said. However, I do very, very much feel like at some point I'm obliged to cook something with this and Rule Britannia. Just for the memes. It's not going to be good. Before any of you think that the sound of my voice talking about cooking with this and Rule Britannia is somehow a sign that that's going to be a good thing, it's not. It's just going to be funny on the 1 out of 10 occasions that it actually works. But that's kind of... Like, Britain has a lot of really good unit targets for this card. And a few ways of converting that. I sort of think this is probably going to go into my fight control deck that runs, like, maybe
just like the chain home stuff. Yeah, maybe. Like it's
but it's so expensive. It's so slow.
That's just like it's because it's coming down already like after you're able to cast your formidables and stuff. So it's not even helping with getting to formidable, which is like the big thing the deck wants to do.
It's giving you some extra tempo late game if you go late game by making your chain homes and formidables cheaper and make it like it's double bubble. It's also making the target stronger. But you've still gotten there, and there's a break point at which that deck, if you haven't seen it, go check my channel. It's basically the closest you're going to get at the minute to a good budget control deck. But it's... The problem is there's a break point on that deck where you're kind of already winning, and this might just be a win more card, and that's always a big concern for me. I'm with you, and even having played around with this card, I find this card hard to evaluate, because I think it's so dependent on how slow the meta gets. Like in a really slow late game control meta that relies on big bodies to win you games, the stock on this rises infinitely in a lot of British decks, because it can turn a number of British massive guards into a total nightmare to deal with. But in anything approaching the speed of meta we currently are seeing in the game, why does this cost 5? is where I land.
I do just want to, like, on a side note, just in relation to Rule Britannia, I'm just going to put this out into the cosmos, because maybe 9309 are listening. Buff Rule Britannia. It needs help.
He's not wrong.
Just make it, like, just have your units fight random enemy units. Like, do the buff and then have them fight random enemy units. Make it a board clear. Make them all chain home, basically. Just cast chain home on all your things. Then it will be actually like good.
Just make it into a massive HMS formidable.
Kind of, yeah. Just basically have it like all your stuff +2/+2. Make them fight random enemies, like enemy units.
Sure, yeah.
Have it be an actual payoff.
Yeah, I'm with it because it's there. But yeah, it's fairly indifferent, honestly. We do still have, however, a Soviet elite to go, and we know where these can go. Right, it is the 289th Gatchina. I have to pronounce that so carefully. Yeah, broke core, but you really do. And I believe I am pronouncing it correctly, but Russians, let me know. Red Sun, if you're out there, my brother, let me know, because is it Gatchina or Gatchina? Or Gatchina? I don't... It's a weird word for me to get because it's not in Cyrillic, weirdly. Anyway, this is a 2-cost, 2-op cost elite infantry. It is a 5/2, and it has Blitz, Bond, Smokescreen, and Destruction. Draw a card. Your HQ gains defense equal to its cost. Right. Before Core begins commenting, I have but one thing that I really do want to emphasize. I know we're doing keyword soup. I do. But could we have put something on this that wasn't smokescreen?
Yeah. They've
Just
slapped smokescreen on so many things this expansion.
Why, in all that is holy, would this card, a high attack, low defense, bond blitz infantry, need that you want to die? You want it to die? Need smoke? Just give it ambush. Really? Is it? Anyway, save me from my rant.
Yeah, I think smokescreen has been like the most printed keyword this entire set, and I think J King was correct. They're just doing it because it lets them put a second combat keyword on the card without actually affecting the card.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in this case, let's be honest. In this case, it does literally nothing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this card is like, it's good. This is a very good card. It's not unbelievably good like every other Soviet elite, except for like the Stalin and the garbage ones. This is not an auto-include in decks, but this is very much worth consideration in a lot of decks. Versus control, like, the biggest downside with this, it's not bond, it's the 2-op. The 2-op is what's going to hold this card back. But even then, I think you still play this in a bunch of Soviet decks. I am likely going to be playing this in Soviet Air as one of the handful of ground targets for the IL-10 alongside like the SU-100, because just getting an extra copy of this off the IL-10 destruction is pretty good. Also, being able to print an extra copy of printing an extra copy of this off of your Guards Naval, also very, very good. This is also potentially an effect that Soviet control would like, because again, just consistent healing is something that Soviets really, really do like. Plus, this draws you a card, which again is something Soviets really, really do like. Against other control decks, this is a 5-attack thing that you can just jam into their front line and pressure with, and once it's eventually dealt with, it just replaces itself, you heal a little bit. Yeah, I think this is going to be a very, very good card. It's going to slot into a handful of decks. I just don't think it's going to be as auto-include as a number of the other good Soviet elites, but certainly not a bad card in any stretch of imagination. I also do want to say the art on this card is beautiful.
Yeah, you beat me to it. This is a stunning piece of art. It really is. And it's very period and it's very Soviet. Yeah, I really like the design, notwithstanding smokescreen. 1939 devs. Devs, I'm sorry. You know where you could, most of you can reach me, but come on, really? But outside of that, I actually really like the design of this card. It punches like an absolute animal. It's cheap. It's a really good turn 4 play. It really is. Even with, like, I'm not quite sure why this isn't 3-1 rather than 2-2 when it comes to cost and op cost, but that's fine. And then when the effect when it dies, like, is potentially so good because it's giving you things that Soviets really want. Like, it's giving you healing. Hey, look, we're seeing more healing in the game. Those of us who have been, those of us who have been suffering under Germany burn and Sabe Regiment, rejoice! It is now possible to heal your HQ. But I actually think this is actually a fairly It's so hard. This is like the second time I've said this is a fairly moderate, well-rounded Soviet elite. It's just good. It's not cracked beyond all belief, and it's not utter bicycle spokes. It's just good, and we'll find homes. By the way, did we change the team who were designing Soviet elites? Did I miss a memo? Because
maybe
this doesn't happen.
Maybe the people who are responsible for the Soviet elites have been moved over to designing Finnish cards. I think that might explain it.
It's possible, or rather, half the team that designed, bear with me here, half the team that were designing Soviet elites have moved to the Finnish cards, and the other half went to the Polish design team.
Yes, the ones that designed all the terrible elites get to do the Polish stuff now.
Again, you all know me. You know I'm kidding. You know I love you. But come on. Yeah, no, I mean, I honestly happy to see it.
Yeah, just a solid card. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's gonna make its way into a couple of lists. It's just it's not auto include, but like that's perfectly fine. It's still a very, very good elite.
Yeah, totally. Okay. More Soviet this time as we move away from the elites. And we get to the 199th Rifle Regiment. Core's face tells this is going to be so much fun. Okay, so before Core gets to go, the 199th Rifle Regiment is a 2-cost, 1-op cost limited infantry. It is a 2-2, and it has Bond, Smokescreen, Shock, gets +1/+1 when you deploy or add a British or US unit. I have a feeling I know where this is going, but I'm going to lean back and take a drink because I have a feeling this might be marginally entertaining. Core, why don't you take us through the 199th Rifle Regiment?
Once again, first and foremost, just random smokescreen on this just to give it a second keyword. Like this is just where we live now. And once again, we're like pigeonholing this into exactly Sov US and Sov Brit, which I like. I just don't understand where this is coming from. All of a sudden, like, why are we being forced into this act? Like, I understand like the big three, that whole thing, but like, it's not an excuse to pigeonhole us like this with certain cards. Like, this effect is very, very powerful. The fact that this is deploy or add is very relevant. But like, what are you adding in US? You know, like you're deploying stuff, yeah, but you're not really adding. Britain gets to do all the adding with garrisons, for example, and like Britain already has some synergy with that with Oxford as well. So yeah, I don't know. This to me is just a bit of a, I don't know. It's a bit of a head scratcher as far as the design goes. I think, well, it's going to be a very good card lower ranks for sure. Just the cheap growth threat with shock on it is going to be solid. Um, but yeah, I'm just not a fan of this. It's just, again, I don't like being pigeonholed into exactly Sov Brit or Brit U or like Sov US. I just think it's a bit of a, I don't know, it's a bit of a nothing burger.
It's a bit weird, isn't it? It's really
Yeah.
just odd. It's an odd bird. I'm not quite sure what it wants to be. It feels maybe like we're planting the seeds of something that might grow in the future. Because if we're not, I by the way, I have no idea. We're not that far ahead, just to be clear. But if we're not, I'm not quite sure why we're doing this. Also, it's not often I say this, but I don't know who manages to find them, but someone somewhere manages to find some creepy AF Soviet art. I don't know what it is, but something about this piece of art just gives me the creeps. It's just a little sinister. But yeah, I can't really add much. Because I don't. There's nothing to synergize it with. So I don't know
Yeah.
what it wants. I don't know what it wants to do. So I can't comment on whether it does it well. Which is fine. Let's move on. We're off to America again. Right. Okay. This is an American order. This is rationing. This is a standard order. It is a 2-cost order, and it says choose one. Remove bond from cards in your hand, or give your HQ +4 defense. I'm quite interested because this is okay. 1, art, very interesting, very cool, very period. 2, Core, what do you actually make of this effect? Because it's a very Homeland only effect.
Yeah. Like, on one hand, it's like the bond side of this card is frequently going to do nothing for you unless you're playing this in exactly like Brit US. All my cards have bond on them, but like, it costs 2, which is like a credit too expensive for that effect. But on the other hand, this is, I think, the only consistent piece of healing the US has access to. It's just 2 credits gain 4, which is decent on rate. Like, I'd argue this is a little bit better than fortification in that sense. Like, the -1 credit for the -3 health is like a-okay because you're much happier spending 2 to gain 4 than spending 3 to gain 7 in a lot of cases. So like, yeah, the health gain is the best part of this card. The bond card, like the bond half, does nothing. This may as well have just been 2 credits gain 4 HQ defense, and I just don't think that's good enough to see play. Like, we already run fortifications on occasion because we are that hard up for healing, but we're moving into a format where we have a lot more healing now. So I just think this is, I don't think this is anything to think about really.
No, I think this would have to find a super specific home in a super specific
Yeah.
meta, which I currently don't think exists. But I do think it is actually decent mathematical design.
Hmm.
Like 2-cost heal 4 is good. 2-cost heal 4 with an occasional utility slash upside. I don't object to slapping a bit of occasional utility. There are going to be niche decks where you wouldn't mind being able to rip bond off a few cards in your hand. Not many, mind you, but there are going to be niche cases where it might be handy. And if you're running it anyway,
Yeah, well,
but
maybe.
but my problem is you have to be running it anyway, and that means that you're
Yeah.
cutting card slots in a US deck basically for healing.
Yeah. Like you can in theory use this like with the Bersaglieri dudes, the
Yep.
Italian guys, to remove the bond off them, which makes them like a little bit better.
You can
But
also
you're
do
passing
it.
turn 2
You could do it with the
to set that
Japan.
up.
You could do it with the Japan Elite as well, actually,
Yes.
because that kind of creates Uber heal. Because you get a handful of cards that have had bond heal your HQ for 1. You rip the bond off them. I don't know whether it's good, but you could. Like there are things you could try and do with this, but I feel like a lot of them are just a long reach for something on a supermarket shelf that you probably don't want that much.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because it's interesting design space.
Yeah, see, like the biggest issue is that the first effect, remove the bond, it's so situational. It requires you having a critical mass of bond cards
Yeah.
in your hand to remove the bond from. Because in every other scenario, it's just 2 credits gain 4, and
Yeah.
is that good enough to see play? No, not really.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it good? Technically, mathematically, yes, but it doesn't mean it'll see play because nobody wants to be running just raw heal. Yeah, we'll see. But we do get to move on to another US card. And now we get to move on to the 41st Infantry Regiment. This is a limited card. This is a 4-cost, 1-op cost, 3/4 Blitz Infantry with Bond. And it has deployment, develop, death from above, unity is strength, or we can do it. We've seen a Soviet card that does something very similar. I'll say it again. I like seeing this. I like seeing these specific develop pools because I just think it's a much more safe. I know other people have been saying they don't like it because it's not really develop. But, God, this is such a better design than pool of 12 cards, C3, pick one. But that's just me. I like my consistency. Honestly, on the face of it, this is decent stats on rate. I'm not 100% sure. Is the develop good enough to justify the bond? That's my big question with this. But anyway, Core, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, so we saw the Soviet one of these in the last review. So every nation is getting one of these. It's a full cycle of these things. So my comparison to the gifts from Hearthstone is like pretty apt. Seen as every main nation is getting one.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the playability of these relies on 2 things: how expensive the actual card itself is, plus how expensive the cards it develops are. So 41st is, I think, on the it's close, right? Like the body itself is decent. 4-cost, 1-op, 3/4 with Blitz is solid.
Yeah.
And again, it develops 3 like situationally solid cards. Death from above is like removal. Yeah, you can't really control it, but you can be in a board state where you just have one target for it, which is the best case scenario. Unity of Strength is like also potentially fine in like frontline where you have a lot of infantry in the front line. You can just Unity of Strength and like kill your opponent very quickly. And we can do it makes you a lot more resilient versus board clears, which is also potentially relevant in decks like frontline or mid range. So the utility attached to this is decent. The big problem is the cards it develops are quite expensive. Death from above is 4. We can do it as 5, and Unity of Strength is 2. I think Unity of Strength is like the one you're most likely going to be picking off this in like 90% of matchups.
Yeah.
Like you can it's going to be either Unity or We Can Do It, because you
Yeah.
can play turn 4 41st, turn 5 We Can Do It to like insulate yourself versus crossfire. So this has a non-zero chance of seeing play. I think this is a little bit more playable than the Soviet one, even though the Soviets develop pool is like a little bit better, because you get Hammer, Card Draw, and then Burning Sky, which is also like nichely applicable versus like Germany and like Seahawk, for example.
Yeah.
So I think while the Soviet develop pool is a little bit better, the US one is much more eminently playable as far as
Yeah.
a body and a unit is concerned. And I don't think Frontline will be upset about playing a 4-cost 1-up 3/4 with Blitz. I think that's like fine. That gives you like a little bit of extra value, or like a niche answer in a specific matchup. I think this might see play as like maybe a 1-of or a 2-of at
Yeah.
most. But yeah, like I said, there's precedent for these cards being played in Hearthstone in the form of the gifts, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if these cards also saw some amount of play.
No, and there is a symmetry to them. They are all limited cards. They all are infantry. They all have bond.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense. I'm still not sold on them needing bond, but it seems like bond is the price of the specific develop pool. And honestly, I'm okay with that. As I've said before, I like bond as a balancing mechanic to try and restrict deck space a bit. But yeah, I mean, let's round our way through the set. We'll move on to the German version of this card. So this is the 92 Infantry Regiment. This is a 5-cost, 1-op cost, 4/5 infantry. It has bond and shock. And it has deployment. Develop Eagle Claws, Sky Baron, or Tactical Strike. This is another interesting pool.
Yeah. I think this one is worse than both the Soviet and the US one, I'll be honest.
Instinctively, yeah. I think
yeah.
It just
like
it,
the
faces. We're both having faces right now. It's the thinky face of trying to evaluate. Like the thing I find hardest to evaluate, notwithstanding the fact that the body just feels like the card itself just feels a little bit less good. And the pool of cards that it can access doesn't feel better enough to justify how much less good the body feels.
Yeah, like in a lot of cases, like paying 5 for a 4/5 with shock is you're just not happy about it. In a lot of cases, it's just a mediocre body. And then the develop pool, like Eagle Claws is like good in niche scenarios. So like I like the fact that Eagle Claws is one of the options here, because like specifically against decks like Brewsters, occasionally you'll be like, God, I wish I had an Eagle Claws. But it's like usually a card that's not good enough to run naturally in your deck.
Yeah.
But then you have the problem of like Sky Barons or Tactical Strike, which both cards will frequently do the exact same thing. Sky Barons will destroy a aircraft in the support line and draw you a card for 4, or Tactical Strike will deal 4 damage to something in the support line for 3. And frequently they're both going to destroy whatever they hit in the support line. So like you may as well just have 2 options here of like Eagle Claws or Tactical Strike for the most part. So yeah, the pool on this one is a lot worse. There's no flexibility, there's no value option. It's all just different flavors of removal.
Yeah.
And of the flavors of removal, Sky Baron is just like not going to be good enough in 90% of cases. You're just going to take Tactical Strike or Eagle Claws. So yeah, I think this one is just, it doesn't have nearly as many applications as the ones we've seen so far.
Yeah. Tend to agree. I think this is the weakest of the ones we've seen so far. Okay, so we've got US, we've seen Soviet, we're now seeing Germany. Let's go have a look at Britain, and this is Hampshire Regiment. So this is a 6-cost limited infantry. Very British in that it is a 3/7 guard with bond. And it says deployment, develop Convoy HX 175, fortification, or interception. Right, okay. Small bear rant. Because I've done this with develop pools and consistency before. Why a countermeasure? Are there just no British orders that you want to throw in there to keep the consistency? I'm sorry, but that said, this develops two really pretty good orders on a really good guard body. I personally am of the opinion that for its native nation's natural theme, this might be one of the stronger ones here, even with the irritating factor of the countermeasure for literally no reason.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it really is. You could have put any other order on this and fine, but no, random countermeasure. But I actually, low key, I think this is actually pretty good. Cool, what do you think?
I think this one's solid. I think out of all 5, this is like the second best one. Um, we'll talk about what the best one shortly. um, but like the thing that holds us back is it's 6 credits. That's expensive, but the body you get is very, very good. A 3/7. 7 is a lot of health on a guard. It's a lot to
It
get through.
really is, yeah.
Plus the fact that this also gives you the option of getting a 3-cost heal 7, which means this could in theory give you 14 health by
Yeah.
blocking 7 damage on board plus the heal 7. That's a lot. That's a big health swing. And then if you don't need the health, you can just pick Convoy to draw 2. So it's a nice little bump in value as well. So yeah, I think this is very, very solid. Interception makes absolutely no sense. You're like never picking interception. I wish it was literally anything else.
Anything else, yeah.
It could have been like Desert Rats would have been nice. Just a deal
Yeah,
1 damage pit and pin.
Just basically pick an order. We don't really care. Because most of the time you're probably not taking it. Naval supremacy or naval power would have been a perfectly like pin gain some HQ. Would have made more sense to me thematically
100%.
as well on this card. Interception just makes no sense. Bear rant over. However,
I agree.
I also, again, I like the art. I think the art. I'm pretty sure I've seen the art on a Airfix kit box. I could be wrong, but anyway, it's just a cool piece of art. We're gonna go and deal with the last one. Because we did have the Soviet one somewhat out of sequence due to community reveals, but we will go to the 151st Infantry Regiment, which we've sort of foreshadowed. This is a pan version of this, and this is a 3-cost, 1-op cost, 2/3, with Bond and Shock, and it says deployment, develop amphibious assault, expansion, or for prosperity. This is so good. Convince me I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, this out of all the developed cards, this one is so good. You will play this in aggro most likely as like maybe 1 over 2 of you will play this in mid-range, and you will 100% play this in control. The fact that the first of all, the body 3-cost 2/3 with shock is solid. It's not incredible, it's not world breaking, but it is solid enough that is going to see play. You're not going to be upset about playing this. Secondly, the develop pool for this. All 3 cards are cheap. The most expensive card here is Amphibious Assault, which is 3 credits. Amphibious Assault, already a card that is like on the verge of being okay. You're more than happy to pick Amphibious Assault versus very specific decks, especially if you're playing aggro. For example, for removing like a Seahawk or removing a 3 health guard out of the support line to let you get in for damage. So being able to develop removal, fantastic. Expansion. This gives you 1 credit card draw. Yeah, you have to control the front line, but that's fine. If you're playing this in aggro, you're going to have the front line. If you're playing this in control, sometimes as a Japan control deck, you're going to have a unit in the front line every now and again because your deck has so much shock. So you're able to take trades to get the frontline control, which means you will just on occasion be able to play this and take expansion to draw 2, which is solid. And then finally, for prosperity, sometimes you're playing aggro and you just have a board full of Japanese units. And for prosperity, gives them all +1/+1, and that is going to be frequently good enough to get over the line. So yeah, this card is like so good. I don't think it's going to be a 3 of in any deck. I would most assume it's going to be like a 1 of in aggro, a 1 of in control, and maybe a 2 of in mid range. But god damn, is this card solid?
Yeah, It is definitely. I do think there's quite a gulf between some
Yeah.
of the different ones. Like Britain and Japan sit kind of on their own on levels of goodness and utility, and Japan has the edge even there by quite a distance, if only because there are more Japan decks that this card suits. Like, if Britain had bigger, heavier, guard-heavy decks, I would be saying Britain was almost as good, but we haven't seen those decks. Whereas with Japan, we can already see the decks that this is going to see playing. And Japan has one of the best value pools in the game right now. And this adds utility on a good body with value, and I suffice it to say, we are both enthused about this card because this card is just good. Just all round good. You could slap special on this card and I would still be telling you it's good.
Yeah, I was literally just going to say the fact that this is limited is such a boon for like new players as well.
Yeah, like massively so. But yeah, safe to say we're definitely fans of this card. Okay, so next card, off to Germany again, and we arrive at the second front. Cheap joke, but I'm taking it. Second front is a 4-cost German standard order, and it says, first of all, it has Bond, and it says, remove a friendly unit, return it at the end of the next enemy turn, then duplicate it. Right, I'm going to pass this text because the full stop and comma matter here. So, stage 1, remove a friendly unit. Self-explanatory, take friendly unit, it gets removed from the board. At the end of the next enemy turn, it comes back, comma, then duplicate it. So as soon as it comes back, if there's space, it will duplicate itself. It will come back on the support line, and then it will just make a copy of itself. Right. Well, that's what the card does. Now Core's going to tell me whether the card is actually good.
This is like a super interesting card. I just don't think it's good. It's very expensive is like the downside, right? Like there is a lot of very neat things you can do with this. Like in specific decks that have like a payoff unit, like for example, like the first thing that comes to mind is like Navy Burn. You can play this on your second Marine division. It protects it. Like you can say it's like turn you production your Marine division on turn 3. So it's out on turn 3. Turn 4, you can like play Mikura, you get your burn trigger, you then production off your FW, and then you second front the Marine division, blinks it out so it's protected for the turn. It comes back, spawns a second one, and then suddenly you're dealing 6 every turn without having to expend the credits on the second Marine division. So like there's very interesting stuff you can do with this. And I'm hoping again, I'm hoping that the Dornier triggers how I'm hoping with these effects, like when you target it. I'm hoping it triggers on itself leaving, because if you play Dornier on 3 and second fronted on 4, turn 5 is going to be one hell of a pop-off turn. So there's, like I said, it's a super interesting card. I just think it's too expensive to be like good enough. So yeah, it's going to be fun to play with. There's going to be some interesting stuff you can like brew with this, but none of it is going to be remotely competitive.
No, I will say I do also think this is, I suspect, I don't know for certain because I haven't gone and done it, although I probably will do if I ever get some spare time. I think if I ever revisit my advice for new players, this might make it to my good cards to craft and just have, because value is powerful in the early game.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of value for a standard card. There's just a lot of, without any shenanigans, there's just a lot of good value you can generate off this.
Yeah, as a newer player, just like blinking out one of your big units and then having a second one come down that your opponent then has to also answer is like pretty solid.
Yeah, it's not bad. I think this is a decent card. I think this card fits the mold that we've definitely talked about before, which is this mold of just decent limited and standard cards that are going to see some play at lower ranks, but don't really have much in the way of application in the competitive meta. And you know what? I'm quite happy with that. I like to see that.
Okay with that.
Yeah, great to see that. If we're going to be adding standard and limited cards, that's the kind of standard and limited cards I want to see. Cards that are nice and accessible. You crack open a pack, get a copy of this. You're not sad. You can use it. I don't think you're gonna. Someone's gonna do something crazy with it, obviously, because you can. But it's also just decent. Okay. Let's move. We get to move to another order. We have arrived in Japan, and we have the IGN Shirakumo. Now, the IGN Shirakumo, of course, IGN, it's a Navy card. Just for clarity, I know everyone probably gets it by now, but yes, it has the Navy type. 2 cost, standard order, and it says pin target unit. If it is already pinned, remove it instead. Full stop. Your HQ gains +2 defense. So, to be clear, no, your card does not come back. Yes, really. This says gain 2 HQ defense, and if you targeted a pinned unit, remove it forever on a standard card. Core, how do we feel about IGN Shirakumo?
It's a solid effect. I just don't think it's good enough. Like, of all the cards in the game that are seeing play around that pin, it's mainly just IGN Mikura, and that's because Mikura just draws more copies of itself, which means you just have to draw a single copy of Mikura. I mean, you're also playing the Type 94 TK, which is fine because it gives you the surprise attacks, but you're playing that more so because you can stack 2 of them to remove anything you want. And, like, yeah, you can argue, oh, I can play surprise attack and Shirakumo, and then I gain health and banish it. But, like, yeah, you can do that. Yeah, that is a thing you can do, but you're playing Shirakumo in your deck, and you're not going to always have a Type 94 TK to go with it. So, yeah, I just don't think it's good enough. Again, it is in a vacuum a very powerful effect. It's just all these, like, if it's already pinned, do X effects. It's what people have to realize is that is a 2-card combo. Every time you're -2ing yourself to get the if it's already pinned effect.
Yeah.
And that's something that you really have to bear in mind because it's costing you 2 cards in hand to do this. So yeah, while it is on paper powerful, it's just I don't think anywhere near good enough to actually see play.
Yeah, I think this is another one of those cards that actually I do fit into the previous category of just good standard cards this is a great cheap removal tool for control decks that can't afford to run tons and tons of elites. But is this a competitive card? I really don't think so. There'd have to be something truly, truly nuts that you could do with it. I'm sure there are some interactions with the whole removal thing, but it's just it's so on the edge of being really, really good. And this does because we've had at least one card. Because I know we've had at least one card where your commentary's been, and it's the Soviet card, where your commentary was not good enough at 2, cracked at 1. This is for those who are looking at this going, could we make it 1K? At 1K, this would be too good as a standard card. I just want to be abundantly clear that 1 credit change would very much change my opinion of this card. But not in a good way, because I'd be saying it's going to be an absolute menace that needs nerfing. But unfortunately, the nerf would take it into an obscurity. It's a shame, but it will see some play at lower ranks, and it'll be fun to tune about with if you want to play a bit of pin removal decks with Japan. There's no reason you can't. Maybe we'll see some Brit Japan pin decks that are just fun to watch. I mean, there's a world where you're, I don't know, running some garrison pin, and this is like ping goodbye, ping goodbye, ping goodbye, whereas the tank is ping suppress, and you're like, stop it, stop turning off my stuff or removing, just stop. But that's going to be fun. It's just not going to be meta.
Yeah.
Okay. We're still with Japan, and we've arrived at Volunteer Corps. This is another standard Japan order. This one is 1 cost. This is a 1 cost bond order, and it says, remove a unit from the battlefield until the end of turn. This one's hyper simple. Remove unit, turn ends, unit comes back. Wow, no PSAs, nothing. Hey, Corps, go!
I think this card's actually pretty good. It's multifaceted in the fact that you could in theory run this in aggro as like a pseudo suppress. Like if your opponent has a guard next to the HQ, you can just volunteer core to blink it out and just get in for damage and kill your opponent. But also like in the Japan remove a unit deck, this is just a very cheap activation for like your Kanazawa. I think it's Kanazawa. The 5 cost 5/5. It also triggers your Dornier for super cheap if you're playing like German ally.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a really interesting card. It's like a slightly worse isolation, but you get to run 4 of them, which is like crazy.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah.
It's a little bit of foreshadowing. It is relevant to a card we're about to talk about in a minute as well. But yeah, this is what I think this is. But clearly, this is an enabler. This is the big trigger enabler for this remove synergy for Japan, because it's a standard 1 cost order that does everything you want it to do, not in an overpowered way. Yeah, I like the card. I think it's decent. I don't think it's earth-shattering, but I think it could be really good in a deck that can make good use of it.
Yeah, I think it's a card that's going to see experimentation, but it's definitely going to see play in like the remove a thing deck. I think it needs like critical mass of actual removal pieces.
Well,
so it definitely slots in there. Yeah,
4 of these in there just says, hey, I've got the removable pieces if I need them. If I can't find one of my better, like more destructive or effective or permanent ones, at least I've got one that can whip something off the field and then bring it back again. Speaking of whipping things off the field and bringing them back again, we move to the Sapporo Regiment. Sapporo Regiment is a 3 cost, 1 op cost standard Japanese infantry. It is a 3/3, and it says gain +1/+1 and a random combat keyword when an undestroyed unit leaves the battlefield. So, I mean, again, this is definitely a card that is trying to build that critical mass of cards that interact with undestroyed units leaving the battlefield. You have this down, and you play Volunteer Corps, and this suddenly gets to be a 4/4 with some kind of combat keyword. I don't know how relevant the combat keyword is, because it's a bit of a roll as to whether you get one that you care about. But at the same time, it's fascinating. It's for a standard card on paper. It definitely just looks good because it's 3 cost 3/3 on a standard infantry, which has a growth mechanic. I don't know if I'm sold or not.
No, I think if you're playing the remove a thing deck, you're more aiming to like burn your opponent out with like Kanazawa in like the mid game. I don't think Sapporo does enough for your actual overall game plan. Like I think you much rather like spend turn 3 developing a Dornier and then like getting massive mana cheating and card draw that way to dig you towards Kanazawa and like other win conditions. It's an interesting card. It's likely going to see a little bit of play at lower ranks, I would imagine, because like on raid it's fine, and the fact it can grow, and I know newer players love rolling random keywords. I can tell you that much from Tesla.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think like as far as like the remove a thing deck, and even then, I don't think even if you're playing like the Germany bounce deck, I don't think this even is remotely on your radar. I just think like the inevitability of Kanazawa is going to be what you're like aiming to play for.
Yeah. This kind of reminds me of the 40th Cavalry Regiment. from the original self-credit denial package. In that it's a card. Sorry, not the 40th Cavalry Regiment, the other one. Now I have to go look it up. The 5th Regiment. There we go. The standard, not the special, which was the self-credit denial synergy card that was the 4-cost 0 op cost 4/4 that had when you lose a credit slot, this unit gets +1 +2 +1 was the final version. If on the battlefield, or -2 cost if in hand.
Yeah.
It falls into that same category of a standard card that, in theory, looks like it gives a tempo value play to a specific thing, but in the end, that archetype didn't end up supporting that style of play, and I think that's a very on-point analysis of this. I don't think that banish, because we're both going to use the word banish, let's be honest, that banish archetype is going to end up supporting that kind of proc value play. I just don't think that's how it's going to end up being played, even if this would in theory be quite good if it was played in that. That said, there is definitely room, if you are a newer player looking at this and you crack open a full set of these and a full set of Volunteer Corps, absolutely think about slapping them in your deck if you're playing for value at low rank, where you're not just going to get ripped by random elites and other stuff. This is decent. It's not a bad card. I just don't think it's going to find a home anywhere massively useful in competitive or high-end play. Again, I think we've been quite clear. Both of us are pro that. Some just good standards are fine. But it's nothing that we're going to get hyped or special about, because it's not. You're not going to do a massive amount of cooking with it. However, we continue on with the removal theme as we arrive at Drive into the Sea. Drive into the Sea is a 3-cost limited Japanese order. It has bond, and it says remove a unit from the battlefield. At the start of your next turn, return it to hand. So this is another way of pinging stuff around if you're Japan. And obviously this definitely has some tempo kill on your opponent, because you can whip something of your opponent's off the board and boing it back to their hand at the start of your next turn, which is kind of doubly annoying because they lose it for a whole turn and then it's back in hand. I just don't know. I don't know how Sure.
I do have a mechanics question on this. So, remove it from the battlefield, yeah, but then the return it to hand, does it like re-enter play and then bounce to hand? What I'm asking is this going to double trigger your Donier or your Kanazawa?
Not that I'm aware of. It should just reappear in your hand. It shouldn't appear on the battlefield and then disappear off the battlefield. It returns it to your hand, not to the board, if that makes sense.
That's a shame, because if it did like return it to the battlefield and then bounce it to hand, this card will be so unbelievably good in the Banish deck. Yeah. As it stands, this is likely going to be like a fine control card, just because it's very annoying removal in a way that a lot of decks like are not going to be happy about having things removed. The fact that it like banishes it for a turn and then it gets bounced and then you have to like respend all the credits to do it. So, I mean, it's fine. I don't think it's going to see play outside of like the Banish deck. Maybe as a 1 of or like a 2 of in like Japan Control, depending on what Japan Control ends up looking like, just in like a generalist control deck.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is pretty pigeonholed into the Banish deck.
Yeah, it's kind of only got one home, hasn't it? It's interesting, but there are better ways of doing it in just a more pure control deck.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got some that have a body. And especially given that this has bond.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
It's always the other thing in the room, isn't it?
Yeah, but like ideally you're playing this after you've played your Kanazawa Regiment. That's kind of... So, in ideal conditions for playing this, the bond will be met.
Yeah.
So...
But yeah, it's interesting. And that's it. Folks, we done. That is the whole of the new cards coming for the expansion. Chatted about, reviewed and covered, but don't go anywhere, because now it's time because the release schedule decided it loves me so much. Now it's time to talk balance patches. Because why not? So we did get a Homefront balance patch. It's not a big balance patch, but we did get one. And we will walk you through it and give our thoughts on it. So, as of recording, this was just earlier on today, it's dropped. And because we were scheduled to get this recording in, it just made sense to do it all in one go, because you can use timestamps. So we get the usual blurb, and then I'm not going to read through it because we're going to focus on the actual cards and the changes, because I think we can both contextualize them. If you want to go read the article, definitely do see what 1939 have to say. The first card getting nerfed may in fact shock nobody. The first card getting nerfed is Buffs. Buffs was a 1-cost, 1-op cost standard British infantry. It was a 1/3 with Fury that said gets +1/+1 when it is targeted by an order or deployment effect. And I've got to imagine most of you are familiar with what this meant, in combination with a couple of other pieces, one of which is rotating. This was one of the most obnoxious and irritating decks that you were ever going to deal with, because out of nowhere, you just got smacked in the HQ twice by a 12-12, 15-15. I think my record was someone who took the time to delay the game long enough to get like an 18-18 buffs just for the hell of it. And, okay. So, buffs, because of this deck, and pretty much solely because of this deck, so far as I can tell, got a nerf. It loses Fury and gains 0 operation cost, which is interesting. Core, we nerfed the buff.
Yeah, buffs has been nerfed. It got its expansion tournament win and was duly dealt with afterwards. So yeah, this is very clearly a nerf. I don't think it's unplayable. I do think the buffs OTK deck's unplayable, but I think now it's just like an okay British 1-drop. For like an infantry focused Brit deck, I think it's fine. 0-op is very, very nice.
Yeah.
It means you can like curve out while also still like operating this, which is great. And if you're in a Brit deck that's still running like a handful of targeted buffs, so if you're playing like for freedom, if you're like US ally, if you're focusing on Brit infantry, you're likely playing Kangaroo Transport, which is still really good with buffs. So like it's fine. It goes from being a degenerate OTK card to being just like a fine British standard infantry. So it's likely still going to see play in like the British infantry deck that we've been talking about this entire review season. So yeah, I mean it's good that it got changed to lots of Fury. I think I'm a-okay with it losing Fury. I mean we're also getting Valentine in the next set, so I don't think we really care about this losing Fury for the most part. So yeah, this is fine. I'm a-okay with this change. This is a healthy change.
Yeah, and the biggest change to the OTK deck, by the way, is the forced retreat card. Like without the ability to force your opponent back off the board, the OTK was kind of off the table anyway. Buffs getting hit, I think, is just an attempt to make it a more tolerable card in general, and I think it's fair. Because I think it's actually fair that buffs kind of got a nerf and a buff at the same time to try and turn it into something that it was probably always more intended to be, which is just, as you say, a good British 1-drop infantry.
Yeah.
Right, to Germany. A German card is getting nerfed. This is the KM Tirpitz, the German elite. It was a 4-cost elite order that said deal 4 damage to the enemy HQ. The enemy cannot deploy units next turn. Really simple nerf. It's just gone from 4 to 5. I don't know. I don't really know whether this makes a massive difference. I don't really know that I honestly think it's enough. I think it could probably have stood to have maybe been hit a little bit harder. Not quite sure how, because I do think it, given the current German meta, Tirpitz is just really good. But not for its intended, like, Tirpitz's big intended thing is denied deployment, which is powerful when you're playing a tempo-based board deck and you can kill tempo from your opponent. But let's be honest, German control at the moment doesn't care about that. It cares about the fact that it pays a few credits and gets to burn your HQ. It still gets to pay a few credits and burn your HQ at a really good rate. 5 for burn 4 is still really good. Core may disagree with me, but I personally don't think this is really significant.
No, pretty much in full agreement. This doesn't really move the needle on it. The main reason this is relevant is it stops you from comboing it with certain things in the late game. Like, you can't just play 5th Rangers as an 8-8, push it up, and then Tirpitz your opponent to stop them from responding on board. Like, that's like the main thing this disables, more so than anything else. Like, at 4, you were able to like Tirpitz and do other things, like set up a board that your opponent could then not deploy anything into, that like basically guaranteed a win. This just takes away the options of playing a like specific subset of units alongside Tirpitz. But still, as a card, as at 5, it's still going to be perfectly fine, because this, you're not playing this until the later stages of the game, regardless of anything else. This is still going to be perfectly fine in like tempo decks as a means of burning your opponent while also removing their ability to respond to the board. This is going to be fine in control still, because it blanks your opponent. This does mean that you can no longer do War Machine into Tirpitz on 3 to deny your opponent a turn of deploying and like getting their early game on board. So you're no longer able to buy yourself an extra turn as a Germany control player to get into your powerful 5 drops. But again, I don't think this entirely moves the needle. If they really wanted to move the needle on like the Germany control decks, this would be Crossfire.
I mean, as much as I mock you occasionally for the issue, I don't think you're wrong. I think you have to hit some other pieces if you're going to start hitting it. I don't think this is a significant enough one. And there are still going to be times when this is 5 credits, win the game.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like I said, this doesn't move the needle in any significant manner. Again, this mainly just stops you from comboing very specific pieces out of the Germany-US deck and stops you from playing it on 3 after War Machine. That's about it.
It stops a fairly degenerate early game high roll, which I'm not against. If you're lucky enough to get this and War Machine into it, yes, it's incredibly powerful. Is that common enough as a play pattern in the deck that I think it's a significant impact to the deck and the deck's problem in the meta? No. Just no. Anyway, we're going to move on, because the Germany control does get hit again. We arrive at the 108 Panzer Grenadier. So 108 Panzer Grenadier was the 6-cost, 1-op cost limited German infantry. 6/6 infantry that says deployment, convert a targeted enemy unit with cost 4 or less into routed troops, then retreat it. Routed troops, of course, is the neutral 1/1 with just generic 1/1 1-op cost infantry. This gets hit twice. It gets increased to 7 cost, and its attack gets lowered to 5. And I don't know. I struggle. I like, it is a hit. In fact, it is a double hit to the value of the card, in that the card doesn't do anything, but is it really impacting what you're using the card for? I just don't know. I don't know whether this is particularly impactful, but it's a hit. I mean, I'm curious, Core, as to whether you have more to add, really.
I'm a lot more surprised that this is even on the nerfs to begin with. A lot of the Germany decks were only running like 1 copy of this. A lot of the Germany US decks had been cutting this. So this is a very like out of left field for me as like a nerf, because we haven't seen all that much 108s in like the last month or 2. So this to me is very, very surprising. The change from 6 to 7 is like quite substantial. This is a big hit. Although you can play front and home the forecast German thing, and then it's
Oh,
right back to 6.
stop
There you
it.
go, fix it for you.
Um,
So yeah,
God,
no,
yeah.
this one's very weird to me. Again, like I said, this was at most a one of in like a lot of the decks, and frequently a cut card. So
Oh, I
yeah,
will
I
say
mean this is
actually, you have
it's
just
substantially worse. But
you have just reminded me of something that I did want to address when I had someone else to talk to about this, because I've seen this bandied about a bit when people have seen the final results of this. I've seen a number of people saying that Turpits and 108 have been nerfed and unnerfed at the same time because both nerfs are utterly meaningless because of the existence of Front and Homeland. I
yeah,
disagree. I disagree really quite strongly for a number of reasons that if you hop back to the timestamp where we talk about Front and Homeland, but I did want to get another opinion. Perhaps Core is with the group of people who think that this somehow just unnerves the guards.
no, I was being entirely facetious. No, that's not remotely how that works. You're still more than likely going to draw a 7-cost 1 Panzer Grenadier before you have a chance to play Front and Homebound. So, like, yeah, this I think does like pretty much kill the card. I don't think. Well, I say that, but it's still probably like fine because
Yeah,
when you compare this to the Fight Panzer, the big
yeah,
7-cost Fight Panzer, it's like on average better. And like the Fight Panzer saw play during Blood and Iron as like a
yeah.
late game removal piece that was like a threatening body.
I mean,
So yeah,
even
this
more
is
recently, the Fight Panzer was a vet, as J King and I have been very vocal about. Was a not uncommon pick off of Blitz Doctrine.
yeah, 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 exactly. So like this is it's still probably playable, but it's substantially worse now.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I will say I was also surprised by this. Honestly, not quite as surprised as I was by our next nerf. So, this is the 175th Infantry Regiment, which was the 3-cost, 1-op cost US standard infantry. It's the big old 6/6 blitzer that has deployment, choose a card in hand, put it on top of your deck. And now it's losing a point of defense for reasons surpassing my understanding, if I'm completely honest. But I have been quite intensively living my life, dealing with a lot of other stuff, doing a lot of testing, and doing some other work which will become apparent. So I have not been as in cards as I usually am. So it is possible that Core is about to educate me as to the urgent need to nerf the 175th Infantry. But off the top of my head, and I am totally prepared to be wrong, I just don't get this.
Yeah, no, this the Reddit can finally rejoice. Their least favorite card has been nerfed. Yeah.
Is that
The
no, but I mean, in all seriousness, because I have been out of touch. I have literally. For those who are wondering, what I mean by this is, for like the past month, for reasons I can't talk about, I have basically only been able. Well, half of them I can't talk about. The rest of them are this behind me, but I've not. I've really just been coming on, running my daily missions, but then I've needed to use what cards hours I have on test servers. So, what is genuine question? Is that really all this is? Is this just like Reddit rants and? Because I just
Pretty much. This only saw play in a single meta-relevant deck, which was exactly the US Soviet Brewster deck. Like, that was the only deck that ran this. That was the
yeah.
only deck that wanted
Hang on
this.
a minute though, because that was this. I might be wrong. Maybe I'm just bad at the game, but this was one of the things that I first started cutting down on in the US
Yeah,
Soviet Brewster's deck.
I mean, this got significantly worse after Alabama got nerfed. Because, like, I mean, Alabama is still fine, by the way. At
Yeah,
plus one, it's still like a it's still serviceable. It's still fine.
I'm on record as saying I actually think Alabama's still a pretty decent card. Like,
yeah, it's not nearly as like swingy as it was. It's still perfectly fine though. A free +1 attack to everything is still like perfectly reasonable. But yeah, like after Alabama got nerfed, like the US Soviet deck kind of fell off a little bit. So like this, I think, is basically just to shut the Reddit up because they have not stopped complaining since Naval Warfare dropped about this card. Oh, why is it a 6/6? It's a 6/6 that you go -1 on. It's like it's fine. It's like if you get it into the front line, it's a pain. Certain decks can't deal with it that easily, like Germany, for example. Germany US struggles to answer this. But I mean, that's also fine because it was a decent check to Germany US for like the entirety of the last metagame.
I was going to say, is that in some way a bad thing?
Yeah, like, and then like the other popular decks in the metagame, there's a lot of Italy ally in the metagame currently, so this just gets eaten by daggers like 90% of the time.
Okay.
So yeah, this for me, this doesn't make all that much sense, other than maybe they are worried about it in US frontline come Homeland or come Homefront.
Sorry,
this might be this might be preemptive. I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, this doesn't make my US frontline list. I know it's a big body.
Know.
It's a big body, but actually, and again, colour me wrong if I turn out to be wrong, but of all the decks that care about going -1 on card draw, US frontline cannot afford that tempo loss just for a flaming 6/6 body when we've got 5th Rangers. I'm sorry, God no. In my opinion, and I stand to be proven wrong, but in my opinion, if you are building US frontline and including this card, you are building US frontline wrong.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I think this is entirely for the Reddit. I do want to say that is all the nerfs, and I just want to point out the lack of crossfire yet again.
No,
I just want to point it out.
Yeah, it's not there. We have Randy's. I will say, if you haven't gathered it already, do take a lot of what I say with a grain of salt. I am being very open about the fact that I'm coming at. This is the part of this that I am least qualified to really know much about because I'm not. You won't have seen me if you're playing in the top couple of hundred this season. I'm not there. I'm still in the 15,000s because I haven't got the time. So all of the players who I usually have fun playing against, I'm kind of sorry I've not seen you guys. I've also learned what it's like to float around the 15, 20,000.
It's miserable.
Yeah, it's not an experience. No ego intended. It's not an experience I'm used to, and not one that I'd care to regularly repeat. But I just haven't had the time to make a climb. But yeah, we're wrapping up for the nerfs, which actually surprises me. I'm not going to get into the big list. In fact, we might talk at the end because we've done really well timing wise on this video. Go us, by the way. We might talk a bit at the end about different things, but I was genuinely surprised that we only saw 4 nerfs. Moving to buffs, we do get some symmetry, because I think we get 4 buffs as well. But anyway, we get to Creeping Barrage. This is such a weird card for me to... Anyway, I'll cover it and then explain, because I'm getting ahead of myself. You can tell I'm coming in blind. This was a 3-cost special British order that said, pin target unit, when the pin is removed, retreat it. It came out. It basically saw 5 minutes of play until everyone realised it was really slow and didn't really do anything useful because pin wasn't that good. It did briefly have a moment of fame when there was a Brit-Japan pseudo-infa-pin combo thing that people were trying out, but honestly, it wasn't that good. And we're now giving it a buff. We're taking it down to 2 credits. I don't object in that it's a card that's in need of a buff. Not gonna lie, it was pretty awful. But I don't know why. Why of any of the cards you could buff, pick this. there are a number of units languishing in the doldrums that could have been tarted up. There are several other things that, in my opinion, could have been polished up. Why are we glittering this particular turd? This is my issue here.
I think it has a lot to do with the archetypes that are upcoming in Homefront. Like, this in theory synergizes with the Germany bounce stuff, because the retreat, if it's a support line, it bounces it essentially. Also has synergy
Hang
with
on,
the Japan.
in what world is that Germany deck running Brit Ally?
You never know. No, I think more realistically, this is just going. I think this is being buffed for the sake of like the Japan banish stuff. I think this I think it's for like the Japan control, like Japan Britain banish control, maybe. So yeah. Also, like, not a card that was on my radar. It wasn't. This is pretty indifferent to me. Maybe I try it out in Japan, Britain, but we'll have to see.
Yeah. We move on to the next buff. This, interestingly, I may have a different point of view, because this is a card that kind of sort of was on my radar. Because I've been on a whole different world. This is Frontier Force. Frontier Force was the 3-cost, 1-op cost, 2/5 Fury standard British infantry. With deployment, add a garrison to your support line. And it's been buffed to have an extra point of defense, which, given the now released, since we've just covered them, the arrival of more British units that are bringing garrison down, it doesn't surprise me that this is getting a little bit of a polish up, because it did kind of just land stone dead. People played it for a bit and then realised it kind of wasn't worth it. With an extra point of defense, this does become quite an awkward body to remove. And with Fury, there are a couple of things you can do with this that can hurt, not the least of which is cause it to become a 6/6, fight something, survive, and then be a 6/6 Fury that beats your HQ to death, for example. I actually, like, if this is the direction that Britain wants to go, with this kind of semi-garrison guard thing, given that we've already got the various fight mechanics coming in, I think this is a good buff. I don't think it's a super buff, but this one shocked me a lot less. I'm curious, though, as to someone who's not been in the other hemisphere of this, how Core feels about this.
It's an interesting one. Like, this has been like on the fringe as well. Like, I've seen it on occasion in buffs, oddly enough, as like a secondary target.
Yeah.
Because it's like just good enough with kangaroo transport that you're like happy enough to like maybe go for this in the mid game.
I suppose, especially if you can get like For Freedom or Bocage on it, it suddenly becomes not a half bad target in that deck, doesn't it?
That's exactly it. It's like it's just big enough to be able to pull off like a mid game OTK against certain decks. So I'm interested to see if this actually leads to anything. It is at the very least a little bit better now in like the Chain Home deck, because being a 6/6 with Fury for 3 is pretty good. But yeah, I'm most excited to test this out in like the Brit infantry deck with Kangaroo Transport. Maybe with the new Bond stuff as well. This might not be half bad, because it's 2 bodies for 3, so you should in theory have something left over to trigger your bonds off of. So yeah, I'm interested. I'm not sure if the 1 health is enough to get it over the line, but it might just be.
Yeah, not for nothing, but this is definitely getting slapped in my attempts to make the polar bears not terrible. Because this actually synergizes quite nicely with polar bears, if you haven't noticed by now.
It does.
Now,
also
the ad, however, note you're not deploying. Really important.
It synergizes with the Soviet 2-drop that cares about adding or deploying Brit units.
It does.
There is that.
But yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm definitely going to play around with it, because I'm going to be playing around with a lot of almost mono, if not actually mono, Brit decks. I mean, I know I'm doing at least one mono Brit deck, because I'm on record as saying that's going to be my attempt at Field Marshal climb. But okay, sure, I can live with that. So next we move on to a Soviet card. So this is the KV-1 1939. KV-1 1939 is a special Soviet tank. Its former stat line was a 6 cost, 2 op cost, 4/6 tank with guard and heavy armor 1. And this definitely got the polish. This is now a 6 cost, 2 op cost, 5/7 special tank with guard and heavy armor 1. So we certainly weren't afraid to up the stats on this one. Before I have comment, let's see what Core makes of this.
This is still unplayable. It's fun. It's actually so funny to me that they're buffing this after I mentioned when we saw the other KV earlier in the set that like the limited keyword soup KV is just better than the special one. So I guess that's not strictly true anymore. But I think it's still pretty accurate. Yeah, this card is still absolutely unplayable. You're paying an extra credit for an armored train, essentially, and it's nowhere near as good as train. They could have gone even further with this to make it playable, but like, yeah, no, this needs a lot more help than this to see any semblance of play. I mean, it does have 2 keywords, so technically in the soup deck it might be okay, but I don't think you want to be playing this in the soup deck.
No, I mean, I will say, I personally am. I will say, if you are asking my opinion, if you really want to move the needle on this card, change the op cost.
Yeah, like 1 op.
Yeah, at 1 op, this would be I mean, it would still be rough, but it would be a hell of a lot more appealing because not only is this clunky, it's also really slow.
Yeah, like you could have made it a 6/7. You could have given it shock or something. You could have just done anything else with it.
It just needs more, basically.
Yeah, it's way too vanilla, and it's a special, and it costs 6.
Yeah, like you. I mean, I do think shock would be quite appealing on this. There's definitely some stuff to do that, or I don't know, make it a much more aggressive tool. Maybe set it with a higher attack and a lower defense because it's got the heavy armor. I don't know. I tend to agree. I don't think, as we have said before, this doesn't shift the radar with regards to this card. Like, outside of maybe if you're trying to fill deck space in the desperate build of the keyword soup deck, this rates a slot just because it's there. But even then, I don't know that you're happy to see it. We do. Yep, I was correct. We do have 4. One more buff. This is a US buff. Core, rejoice! A US elite is getting buffed. I don't think this is actually Core's rejoicing face, but I'm trying. This is Seaborn Invasion. Seaborn Invasion was the 9-cost US Elite Order, and it says all enemy units in the front line retreat. Add 2 US Infantry units there with a total attack of 6. This basically saw no play. Right, it has been changed by being reduced to 8 credits. Core, rejoice! A US Elite has been buffed.
Yeah, I mean, I have been on record multiple times as like calling for Seaborn to be buffed because it feels so miserable playing it. I'm pretty sure I hammered on at like several points during like the Throp video about how bad Seaborn Invasion is, but I was playing it because it was like a big flashy fun elite. Yeah, like 8 cost is a step in the right direction, still nowhere near like where this card needs to be, considering that this came in and replaced mass deployment, and mass deployment was a much better card than this. Yeah, like they need to do something about like the units it's spawning. It has to be like 2 units with total attack of 6 is just not good enough. It needs to be like 2 US infantry with total cost of like 10 or something. there has to be some upside for playing it, and like the total attack of 6 is just not good enough, particularly after the rotation of the 0-5 medics, which means you can no longer high roll the 0-5 and a 6-6 alongside it. So yeah, it's still nowhere near good enough to see actual play, I don't think.
Sad, really, isn't it? Because I can't
Yeah.
argue with you. You're right, it's not. It just isn't. Oh dear. Seaborn invasion. You got something, but yeah. So, 4 nerfs, 4 buffs, some of which we've been a bit skeptical about. I think it's safe to say this was not the balance patch that a lot of people were hoping for or expecting. I think there are a lot of people who are probably not going to be massively happy with this as a balance patch. However, there is one last piece of order of business that we need to attend to, which is a returning card which got reworked and wasn't in the resistance package, because obviously the whole resistance package got reworked. But amidst all of that sound and fury, we did get a rework to a returning Soviet card. So this is the new, I know Kelly teased the cost in Discord previously, this is the new Monastyr. So Monastyr is now an 8-cost order, it's 8-cost Soviet elite order, and it says, destroy all units with 1 or fewer combat keywords. Core! Talk to me about the new Monastyr.
This, I think, is going to be good.
Okay.
When you look at the current metagame, now obviously current metagame is not going to be the future metagame. The metagame is going to be massively shaken up. But when you look at the current metagame, the amount of units with 1 or fewer keyword is pretty much most of them. So for the most part, this is just going to be 8k to the last man. For the most part, obviously with the upcoming set, a lot of units will have multiple keywords. But a lot of those units with the multiple keywords, one of those keywords is like quote unquote temporary, like smokescreen, like shock. They don't last forever.
Yeah.
So this will frequently just wipe the board. I think this is going to be like relatively good. I think this has the opportunity to be on average better than strat focus in a lot of cases against a lot of very specific decks. So like a lot of the more mid-range stuff, like strat focus, kind of falls short because there's like usually a mix of ground units and air units, and you can't fully deal with everything. And a lot of these mid-range decks, a lot of their cards only have only have blitz or only have heavy armor. So I think Monastyr is going to be a valuable part of Soviet control moving forward. I am absolutely shocked that they have made it playable.
One thing I will also say is if any one nation is going to be in a position to sustain enough combat keywords to turn this into not a binary, like not a symmetrical board clear, it's Soviet, probably Soviet Finland. There's a very good chance that if you're playing the keyword soup thing and you drop this, you clear basically everything your opponent has while leaving your own board untouched.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I mentioned in like one of the previous videos like that I was looking forward to forcing Finn control, and this is exactly what I was looking for. I think I'm going to be jamming a lot of Soviet Finn control in the upcoming expansion just for fun. So yeah, Monastyr, it is symmetrical in some regards, yeah, but you have the tools to make this not like asymmetrical very easily. So yeah, this is going to be, I think, a very good card.
Yeah. So I do want to take a moment to address the elephant in the room, which is the rest of the cards returning to the game unchanged. And because I'm me, and because of my reputation, I would be amiss if I did not pop this card onto the thing and say 1939 as a Britair main.
Yeah.
Why you do my Spitfire so dirty? What? Why my Spitfire come back vanilla 6/6 with 2 op cost? What? Why?
There was several cards on that return list that needed changes that are just not getting changes, and this I think is unprecedented.
There are other cards, but I do think this one, all joking about my reputation aside, is perhaps the most standout of the unchanged cards.
The fact that they thought, yes, Britain does need a blank vanilla 6/6 fighter, and it's not even that it was like they wanted to bring it back for draft, because it's already in draft. They've already put it on the blacklist for the reserve cards that are legal in draft. So this makes no sense at all whatsoever. Who is this for? Why are we getting the Spitfire back? What's going on?
More importantly, why are we getting one Spitfire back in what has been historically one of the only attempts Cards has ever made at a tribal deck? I'm sorry, but this Spitfire it's got to be the loneliest girl in the entire game right now. This Spitfire Mark V hanging out in the hangar going, I don't even know who dusted me off and why.
They could have at least just done the 1939 thing and slapped Blitz on it.
Yeah. I probably would have been okay with that. It wouldn't have been good, but I probably would have been okay with it. I don't know. Like, there are other cards that you could look at, things like Jungle Warfare, for example, that you could look at and say maybe needs a bit of something or a tarting up. I would argue that maybe you could do something with Seaforth Highlanders, but yeah, there are definitely cards. Like, of all of them, I will say USA coming out quite well. They've got 4 returning cards that are really, they didn't need the help. They're fine.
I would argue Half Track.
I suppose, getting the current meta,
I'm still unsure on if Half Track is going to be good enough. I think it was like a 2-cost 2/1.
Yeah, I think I've maybe got. I think myself and J King have maybe got our hindsight goggles on with regards to how much we're happy to see the Half Track back. And then, I mean, Soviets. I mean, the 25th Infantry, the guard that spawns light infantry.
Yeah, that one's
that one's a bit weird. But the other ones, like 5-Year Plan and Bryansk coming back as was, yeah, okay, I can buy that. Japan, I mean, like we said, Jungle Warfare. Tony already, everyone's cooking. I've been tagged multiple times in Discord by people going, look, Bear, you were right. Yeah, Tony gonna do some hard work even if he doesn't want to. Because just he always has done. And for the Emperor, I don't know. What would you do with For the Emperor? And as for Last Rites, I mean, my views on Last Rites have long since been recorded, so I'm not going to comment on a card that I have a distaste for to start with, but it does its thing. Germany, okay, Jagd Bomber doesn't need help.
Yeah.
Jagd Bomber good. U-48. Given the nerf to Tirpitz,
I still don't think you ever even remotely considered the U-boat though. It's what makes Tirpitz so good is it's attached to burn.
Yeah.
the U-boat by itself is just such a do nothing.
Yeah. The Trop, not going to talk about. I'm so happy to see that back, if only for newer players. Is one of the best newer player cards in the game, bar none. You're never going to change my mind. It's just so good. And Joint Operation, I think it could have been buffed, but I don't think it had to be buffed. And we kind of mostly talked about Britain. Honey doesn't need any help. She's back. She's still going to do what Honey do. And there's plenty of draw. Thank you, Land Girls, to make Honey happy. Honey going to feed quite well. Royal Ulster Rifles. I'm sorry, for me, it's mostly still a nothing burger, but okay, it's back. I don't know what you'd have changed, really. Like, bounce some HQ damage. It's nice into burn, I suppose, but it's an elite, so how often are you seeing and playing it? To say, Seaforth Highlanders, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced on Seaforth. I know Jaking was a lot higher than I was, but I'm not convinced that the game is in a state where Seaforth is going to be all that great.
Yeah, my thing is, Seaforth Highlanders is effectively a 4/7 guard, which is good stats. However, look at some of the Bond guards and other guards that we've been gaining, and I think it's just a little bit lacking something. Maybe just a combat keyword. I don't know. And I'm not going back over my poor. I'm not going back to my poor baby. Why is she so lonely? Like,
this is like, it's just the biggest question mark. Like, was this just an oversight from 1939? I'm so confused.
It's not often, but what did she ever do to offend anybody? She just rolling back out of retirement, and like nobody. She's like the retired cop that comes back 20 years later and is still stuck with their old standard issue 38, and nobody even thinks to give them a new handgun, let alone more training. She's like she's walking into a 50 caliber world with a 22. I feel so bad for her. She's just outclassed by everything in the game.
Like, I'm usually like relatively positive towards 1939. I normally give them the benefit of the doubt. I normally don't criticize them. But this one, I have to ask, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's like, why? Just why?
Oh god.
I mean, if nothing else, it's an entertaining conversation, but like, I don't get it. I know, maybe by the time I'm editing this, there's been a balance patch that I don't know exists that whips out, and a few of these get changes, in which case, Core, expect a call. Because I think we'd want to talk about it, but no, it's like, genuinely, that wraps us up, though. So, that is it. That is Homefront. Balance patches, new cards back, resistance reworks, all the craziness has happened. I think it's worth taking a moment, and guests first, but I think it's worth taking a moment to just be, I guess, talk about how we feel, just holistically. We've talked a lot about, God knows, in the last 7 days, we have talked a lot about the specifics of this expansion. But holistically, now that everything has been seen, what do you make of Homefront, Cole?
On the whole, I said it before and I'll say it again. I am much higher on this set than I was Naval Warfare. This set seems to be, I don't know, there seems to be a return to a lot more like onboard interaction, which I'm happy to see. I feel like this set is of a lower power level compared to Naval Warfare by quite a substantial margin. There's like one or two outliers, obviously. Kirkenes and Mustang are like very, very good, and then everything else is like fine. we're getting a lot of very interesting stuff in this in this set. There's a lot of very cool stuff for brewers and deck builders like myself, which I'm very excited about. This will keep me going for at least a couple of months as far as like deck builds and ideas go. So yeah, I'm much higher on the direction of this than I was with the direction of Niv Warfare. Niv Warfare was just a little bit too much, like a little too focused on off-board orders and burn damage. So yeah, I'm just glad to see like a little bit of a return closer to what Blood and Iron was, as opposed to like continuing down the path of what Naval Warfare kind of represented. So yeah, as a whole, I'm positive on the set. I think this so far, like just from the vibes and from what we've seen, it seems to be like a very interesting set, and I'm excited to do a lot of brewing, a lot of testing, and hopefully the metagame shakes out in such a way that we're going to have a little bit of like a churn as far as the top decks are concerned. I'm interested to see what way Resistance lands as an archetype. That's like the one thing, like the main thing I'm like not 100% on. From the rest of the archetypes, I can tell you, like, Germany Self Bounce is going to do absolutely nothing. Kettenkrat's going to see playing Heinz and maybe aggro, but, like, that's it. The Self Bounce stuff as a whole is just not good. the even cost stuff.
The viewers would murder me if I didn't, given previous commentary, get you to speak kind of specifically on, now that you've literally seen everything, where Core lands on keyword soup.
I think Keyword Soup is going to be a middling deck at best, thankfully. The Soviet package didn't get any super cheap enablers, which is what the deck needed to really like snowball early. When you look at like at Legends, what the invade deck really like, the crux of the invade deck was the early invade things. Like the early units, like the invasion scamp, the 2-cost 1/4 that invaded, and then you had like the really cheap, like criminally undercosted invade actions, which are Tesla's versions of orders, like Invasion Party, which just invaded 3 times for 4, which was crazy. So Soviets didn't get any super cheap enablers for just dishing out a bunch of keywords super easily. The cheapest thing they have is Fortune Fire, which is bad on rate. Then they have the 2/5 guard, which is just a Munda Stone from Legends on a body, which is also like not great. It comes down late enough that you're not super concerned about it. Also, the attack is low enough that it can be hit by like Raiding Brigade and a few other things. It can be hit by Peggy, and yeah, there's a lot of it's like eminently removable. So I'm not super worried about Keyword Soup. I think a lot of the bones of Keyword Soup are going to make its way into like other decks, like Kirkenes and Silesia are going to make their way into Control. I think Silesia might make its way into mid range, and so well, I mean Kirkenes is going to make its way into everything Soviet right now. But yeah, I don't think the archetype as a whole is going to be that good. Thank God. Again, a lot of this is predicated on the fact that the keywords in cards are worse than the keywords in Legends on average. Again, no ward, no drain, no lethal, so we don't have to worry about that, thankfully. So yeah, keyword soup as a whole, I think we're safe. I'm still not a fan of some of the design space they've explored this set. Like the Professionals, I think is a design mistake, top to bottom. The German 5/6 elite discard guy, I think we're all in agreement, is a design space that none of us want to see explored any further. Similarly with decoy tactics from Finland. So yeah, like a handful of misses, but overall a lot of hits for me, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think I differ massively. I'm obviously going to be super excited to have seen some good British stuff to point at British decks, believe it or not, that aren't there. Because breath of fresh. I can do something different. I'm kind of interested in the New Japan stuff. I think it's going to be interesting to play around with to see what you can do with it. I'm totally unconvinced about the new German stuff, but I don't think Germany needed the help, so I'm kind of fine.
Yeah,
I'm a little underwhelmed for the US on the whole.
yeah.
I think the US, given what they lost in the rotation in particular, I think the US took a bit of a kicking in this expansion.
Yeah, 100%.
Resistance, I'm not going to say much on because I've done enough testing on it that I have very strong opinions, but none of them can I talk about. But I'm interested to see how it lands in the community and what people do with it. and the directions people choose to go, because we are a small group in testing, and a lot of us are hyper competitive, which means we sometimes get something and it suddenly turns out we've all just gone in exactly number of times we're all just like, and we've all got the same list in about 5 minutes because we all just think that way. So that's a thing to be aware of. Just a little bit of lore from internal testing. Sometimes the challenge of it is that you guys collectively outnumber us vastly, which means you're bound to come up with something we haven't spotted. I do want to take a moment to talk allies. I just do. Because I don't want to reiterate any of the stuff. I agree basically entirely with the negatives and the positives that Core's dropped in general, and he's covered most nations, especially the main nations, really well. Let's talk allied nations. We're ignoring France because resistance, which was France.
Yeah.
Fine. Poland. Why? Not why anything in particular, just why? Like, Poland basically got nothing. Nothing of any use or interest, nothing that I want to cook with, nothing that even remotely interests me, and a bunch of stuff that frankly didn't belong there. So I really do feel for anyone who is a Polish enjoyer. And yes, I know Legions was seeing a lot of play, but that's like 3 cards at best. That's not Poland. That's just Japan with 3 Polish cards that happen to be particularly good in a Japan mid-range deck with acceleration that is, frankly, at times busted. Finland. Why? But in entirely the other direction. Not only why so much potency, but also why the lack of true cohesion, apart from, hey, look, we're better than the US as the promoted ally for the keyword soup deck. Except you're clearly promoting US as the ally for the keyword soup deck. Just why? That'd be all I've got. Italy. I've said it. I am so sad for Italy. Not because I don't think what was tried was interesting, but because I think what was tried is not going to be able to do anything actually functional in game, and I think that's kind of sad because it's an interesting regiment, an interesting idea of interaction, and an interesting way for cards to walk down the very tentative fine line of any kind of recursion. And I will emphasize, I will always prefer designers to err on the side of caution when it comes to recursion. I'd much rather you put some recursion out, it was a bit shit, and then you buffed it later, than you put it out, it breaks the world, and then you have to nerf it into oblivion, which is usually what happens. But yeah. And as I say, France be France. Vive la resistance? ? I think summarizes my view on resistance. But yeah, on the whole, again, though, I am largely positive. I know there's a lot of talk about power creep. I do. I welcome to card games. And I do think Core makes an interesting point about, I do think the sheer punch of this entire package of an expansion is substantially less than Naval Warfare was, and goes in healthier directions. And I'm all for that. And just to the dev team, for the indifferent, middling, just decent limiteds and standards, long may it continue. Long may we see more of that happening, because that is healthy for the largest portion. Because I think we often forget, even Core, as a brewer and a streamer, sits in a relatively small sphere of cards players. Myself and J King, we're sitting in an even... I think Core will say it's fair to say we're sitting in an even smaller bubble. We aren't the main player base. You guys are. You guys that are watching this, that are bouncing around at different ranks, making Field Marshal each month, expanding your collections. And 1939, despite any of your other concerns, has thrown a lot of good value early tools for limited collections that you will not be sad to open with the packs that you get from this expansion. And that, I have to say, I really hope we see more of it. I think it's safe to say Core. I think it's safe to say Core's agreeing with me on this. I think that is something we actually, I would go as far as to say we kind of desperately need it. We need more of that to just bring everything into a little bit more of a balance. Yeah, on the whole, I'm more positive on this. On the whole, I have some issues. Of course, I do. Go back, watch the videos. You can hear our issues. Making these videos, that is the other thing I will say. The approach taken this time round, getting some friends in to help me, not just doing hours and hours and hours of me to camera, then hours and hours and hours. You may not get it. Core probably does. It kind of helps when I have to do anywhere between 6 and 10 hours of editing for a video, that I'm not just hearing my own voice talking back to me and nothing else. At least I can enjoy remembering a good bit of crack and a joke and something that was fun, as opposed to just the monotony. I really hope to do a lot more. I want to see Kards SOE grow. There is a lot of talking in the background, but if you're enjoying what we're doing with SOE in general, and I do mean we, this is not just me. It is on my channel. It runs my branding right now. But that's not the intent. If you're loving it, if you're enjoying it, if you want to be, please tell us, interact, let us know, because it will give me the chance to get more people involved, do more things, give me the chance to let other people do shit that I don't have to be involved in, which would be nice too, because, you know, I do run out of air eventually, I promise. Rarely, but it does happen. But yeah, again, thank you, Core, so much for being a part of this. Thank you. If you're not following Core, if you're not supporting Core, please do. If only because you guys have no idea, none, how much tolerance both Core and J King have had to have for the craziness of me organizing schedules, getting the information to the point whereby I can have it and use it at a time that we can record, as opposed to having to rush around like a lunatic trying to record it at a different time. And they have done nothing but bend over backwards to help me. And it means the world because, as everyone knows, my life is not easy. My illnesses aren't easy to live with. My issues aren't easy to live with. So thank you so much for being a part of this. And please take a chance to talk to people about you and remind them where to find you so that they can do the follow thing.
Yeah, so again, like I said at the start, CoreData over on YouTube and CoreData on Twitch, primarily focusing on deck techs and tier 2 decks and a lot of fun brewing. Mostly uploading on Saturdays, but a big shout out has to go to Bear for organizing all this and doing all the editing and all the work on it. It's fine for me to just like hop onto a call and sit here for like 2 and 3 hours talking about cards. As long as I don't have to look at it and edit it afterwards, it's plain sailing. Yeah, a ton of work goes into editing these videos. For anyone who is unaware, like at least upwards of 6 hours a pop for each of these episodes, I would imagine at minimum, like
Accurate.
from start to finish. Yeah, the video editing, for anyone who's never done it, it takes a while, and then you have the rendering on top of that. Rendering can take upwards for a video of this length. A render for a video of this length is going to take at least 6 to 7 hours of your PC being unusable because it's rendering a video. For my own videos, my videos are only ever like 40 minutes long. They take like upwards of 2 hours to render. So yeah, a massive shout out to Bear for organizing all this. A massive shout out to Bear for getting like all the cards together in one place so we can very easily go through them. So yeah, again, if you're not subscribed to Bear and you're not following him, you should be 100%.
All right, well, I think that's enough of a general love-in from us. I will say big shout-out to J King 7 as well. I'll make sure
Yeah.
his links are down below too, even though he's not been part of this, because schedules. If you're not aware, by the way, I'm in the UK, he's in Norway, and J King is in Canada. So if you're wondering why sometimes it's hard to get all three of us in one place, that is a big factor. Because we all have lives and we have to cut into them to make this happen. So also a shout out to anyone's respective partners and families for the tolerance for letting us do this crazy crap as well. All right, that's it, guys. We are wrapped for Homefront. I look forward to seeing you all on the battlefield. I look forward to running some challenges with Core on some of his brews. I look forward to you all watching me madly attempt to make Brit Mono work and mocking me for the idiocy that is involved. As ever, thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves. Be good human beings. And we will be back with more.